All right, council, please take your seats. Welcome to the February 3rd Grants Pass City Council meeting. We have we'll start with a moment of silence, all right? Everybody, we've settle into your seats and join me for a moment of silence. We'll get ready to begin. Thank you, and please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and all the councilors are present tonight. We have quite a number of public that have turned out to talk with us about the adult use ordinance. So would the council entertain the idea of moving that to the first spot on the agenda tonight? And then we'll take care of other council action items afterwards? All right. In that case, let's begin with the discussion about the adult business ordinance. And I don't know, Brad, are you planning to present?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I wasn't planning to present a lot since you had this discussion just a couple of weeks ago, but I do have a couple of additional slides that were in that presentation that maybe might be helpful just to kind of bring you up to speed on what was in the packet. So I can certainly do that. So as we talked about on January 19th, this conversation about adult businesses and uses, particularly related to the downtown central business district. There was a couple of conversations at council last year, and then we had one on January 19th this year. And really the subject here is just a continued discussion about those regulations. The relationship to the council goals are keeping citizens safe by enhancing safe and secure environment and to encourage economic opportunities. As we talked about before, the adult use ordinance originally adopted in '94, further amended by Ordinance 5727 related to the marijuana facilities. And then I've already mentioned the two workshops. Here are the two definitions that are pertinent to the topic here tonight that are in the development code. Adult use and adult business, they're really intricately related definitions there. More or less all-encompassing to any use that is restricted to 21 years of age. I mean, that's kind of the bottom line here, that there is no distinction really in if you have a use that has 21 years of age, they are prohibited, then this code applies. So the current buffer areas, again, we have 1,000-foot buffers, we have 200-foot buffers. The 1,000-foot buffer uses are listed there on the left. And then all residential zones, they have a 200-foot buffer regardless of where those are. So this really is a citywide ordinance, although it applies particularly to the downtown discussion. And this is really why, as you can see on this map, it shows the various trigger land uses and the buffers that are around those. So any parcel that is in a color there is prohibited from having an adult use unless they were grandfathered in. The black bold outline there in the center is the central business district. The discussion on January 19th really kind of focused there on the southwest corner of 6th and D Street, that building. This just zooms in a little bit more. Looking at that particular parcel, showing there's a library buffer of 700 feet, there's a daycare facility buffer of 500 feet. The Oregon Football Academy there right on G Street is considered a recreational facility. That's got a 500-foot, this is within the 500-foot buffer there. So this next slide is just conceptual. If you were to reduce the land use buffer down to 500 feet, this kind of shows the impact. So it opens up some properties kind of down here on 7th and 8th if you were to change the buffer down. And then this slide, if you were to reduce the buffer to 200 feet, what would happen? And the property there at 6th and E would actually, if you reduced it to 400 feet, would be outside of any buffer that is in the code today. So since your January 19th workshop, we did do some research on other Southern Oregon jurisdictions and how they regulate adult use. And this table shows that. This is also in your packet. The ones that list no specific requirements, looking at their current zoning and municipal codes, there's no regulation that is specific to adult use. Others, Central Point, Phoenix, Rogue River, Roseburg, and Talent do contain regulations that are specific only to sexually oriented businesses. They do not address any other type of adult use in their zoning code. Eagle Point does have a little bit more all-encompassing language like Grants Pass, but they do specifically exclude alcohol-related businesses. Gold Hill is probably the most similar to Grants Pass in terms of the language, but they do have a clause in there that excludes alcohol establishments if less than 25% of their sales are alcohol. Then if they are less than 25%, then they are not subject to the same kind of restrictions. So that's kind of a brief overview of what we found in other Southern Oregon jurisdictions. So to date, the council conversations have really focused on the buffer and potentially either adjusting that or looking at what those land uses are that trigger those buffer. Staff looked at a potential alternative to that, and instead of going that route and adjusting what we currently have, we could just change the definition. So this is just one idea, and I guess I'll go ahead and read it just because it's pretty lengthy. But and again, this is just one proposition. It hasn't been ran by any council members or anything like that. So for the purpose of interpreting the development code, a full on-premises alcohol sales use, and that's an OLCC term, Oregon Liquor Control Commission, that is a term that they use. A full on-premises alcohol sales use holding a valid permit issued by the OLCC that is secondary to a primary eating establishment, owned and operated by the same party, and located within the same structure is not defined as an adult use. The alcohol sales shall occupy no more than 30% of the gross floor area. And again, that number, I mean, if you're calling it secondary, it would need to be 50% or less than 50%. We just chose that 30% as somewhat of a starting point for the conversation. So not occupy no more than 30% of the gross floor area of the structure and must have a shared public entrance with the eating establishment. This definition does not waive or otherwise exempt the alcohol sales use from compliance with all OLCC and applicable federal, state, and local regulations. So what would be the implications of a definition like that? It would permit businesses with combined eating and drinking establishment at the specified floor area ratio. So it would no longer be categorized under what the definition of adult use is today. It would not exempt, as the definition says, it wouldn't exempt alcohol establishments from other city OLCC or other relevant permits. They would retain the current prohibition for any other use that is restricted to 21 years of age. So it's, we're really under that definition. We're just talking about combined eating and drinking establishments, not sexually oriented businesses or gambling or anything like that. It would apply citywide, not only to the central business district, and as with any code change, it does require 2 public hearings. This would not be just a city council action. We would have to, you'd have to run this through the normal public hearing process that that the code currently requires. So the call to action is really, more of your discussion tonight. I think that's how it was presented on the agenda for the public to have an opportunity to come tonight. But in our staff research, we wanted to kind of put that alternative out there for the council. Your alternatives, you could select a new buffer, direct staff to initiate an amendment on that. You could redefine that adult use using that definition or something like it. Or, of course, just retain the current buffers.
Thanks, Brad. You've added extra information since our last workshop, so that's great. We have some new ideas on the table tonight. Do we have questions? Rob?
So this might be for Brad, it might be for Mark, where on this proposed new definition that you just read and went over with us, when it says the alcohol sales use shall occupy no more than 30% of the gross floor area, so does that mean that a bar cannot be greater than 30%? Because virtually any restaurant is going to be serving alcohol in 100% of its confines. So I'm not sure what that 30% means.
Right, yeah, I mean, my understanding, as OLCC permits, they're looking at sort of, a very defined area that is actually prohibiting minors.
So they could serve alcohol in 100% of the establishment.
Correct.
And just the 30% would be the bar area or the adult area or whatever.
Right.
Thank you.
Valerie?
Yeah, hello. My question might also be for Mark as well, because I was actually surprised more than anything when I look at other jurisdictions. First of all, I was surprised how restrictive our particular Grants Pass was. So that was a real eye-opener to me, is how restrictive we were. But I was also under the impression that we couldn't do any kind of sexually explicit, sexual nature, that sort of thing. And so I saw that in so many of the other jurisdictions that it confused me, because I had always been told that there was no way to write that into our adult use policy, because that is what always comes up. It's usually not the alcohol or the drinking, but what comes up is, of course, we remember the strip bar, or we worry about a pornographic bookstore going in. I mean, that's what people are more worried about, is that, as opposed to the alcohol part.
I can answer that, or at least I can at least speculate that on this list here, these local jurisdictions have old ordinances that haven't been challenged. And I think that would be the explanation for that. So the expansion of nude dancing to be a protected form of expression came about by virtue of an Oregon Supreme Court case either in the 90s or early 2000s. And so I would say that those ordinances are not consistent with Supreme Court case law, Oregon Supreme Court case law. And it is worth noting that this is all about Oregon constitutional freedom of speech and expression. If we're looking at it under a federal First Amendment analysis, I think that we would have much more leeway in regulating those types of businesses.
let me be clear. So what you're saying is that because these are older ordinances that have not been challenged under the more recent Supreme Court cases dealing with freedom of expression under the First Amendment, that you do not feel these would hold up in a court of law, particularly nude dancing?
That's correct.
And
Yeah,
how-
and maybe those ordinances are newer and no one's challenged them, but I'm absolutely confident those wouldn't hold up if they were challenged.
Okay, just like anything else, so sometimes if you write them in there, if somebody reads them, they don't bother to think they can challenge them, so just saying. Another question is, so you're saying the same thing under the books, the written expression and the freedom, and so you're saying that falls under the same category?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
Brian?
Yeah, thanks, Brad. My question is about the central business district as opposed to outside of the district. Does council have discretion to have different stipulations inside or outside the central business district?
Well, the zoning ordinance is a locally adopted ordinance, and yes, you can set standards for different zones, if that's what you're getting at.
Rick and then DJ?
So Brad, I appreciate you bringing this to us to consider. So I'd like further elaboration, no more than 30% of the gross floor area. So the example I have, can you go into the bar and take a drink or buy the drink in the bar area and carry that drink to elsewhere in the structure that would exceed the 30% area? Or are you limited to that 30% area for even drinking the drink?
Well, as your planning staff, we're just bringing forward an idea, I mean, we're not here to, this is all up. I mean, we would probably need an OLCC specialist to get to some of that.
So I think probably the intent of this suggestion in here is the 30% that is occupied by alcohol sales. Looking back, we probably could have said that better, and I think that we would have said that 30% is the percent of floor space that OLCC regulates to entry by minors, whether it be no minors allowed period, or no minors after 9 o'clock, or whatnot. So OLCC does go as part of its licensing accreditation program. They go out and inspect premises, and I don't really know what their criteria is, but it's, they come up with rules. This is no minors allowed after a certain point, no minors allowed at all, and sometimes that varies between different portions of an establishment. Sometimes an establishment, part of it is open to minors all hours, some parts only up to a certain time. So I think that's what we're getting at there, is the part that OLCC regulates.
So Mark, can we put a time sequence in that definition as well?
Well, you could. You could do a lot of things. You could. I think that OLCC does a lot of that for you. Again, like I said, I think that what this is taking a shot at is just saying this 30% is the area that OLCC tells the business owner, you got to have a sign that says you can't allow minors in here, at least part of the time. So
Okay.
it might be easier just to rely on the area that's OLCC regulated to entry rather than us assigning our times that may be more restrictive than OLCC. I mean, maybe you want to do that. You certainly could, but I don't know if that's the idea of what we're doing here.
Okay, thank you.
DJ?
Sure, I'd like to refer back to the next slide there. Yeah, so code amendments requiring 2 public hearings with UAPC and City Council. It was my understanding coming out of the workshop that would be a council discretion whether it goes to UAPC or not. I know that this is in some regards a land use decision and therefore UAPC could be involved with that decision. Could you clarify that, Mark?
So are you asking if council can just skip the UAPC process altogether?
For this specific ordinance change, yes, that's what I'm asking. Can council circumvent UAPC?
Yeah, council always has the right to directly call something up to it, and council has done that in the past. I mean, for all sorts of items. So whether land use or not. So yes, it could be done. And this is absolutely a land use, it's a legislative land use matter.
Sure.
Or would be if you're actually considering making a change.
Okay, for what it's worth, I think that this ordinance should be a council body decision.
Valerie?
Yeah, I guess my question goes back to the other areas, Ashland, Jacksonville, Medford, Roseburg. So I'm going to assume that they go by the OLCC guidelines then, and that they have no added restrictions. Am I correct? Because they basically say no specific zoning, no specific zoning. Jacksonville, no specific zoning. Medford, no specific zoning. So I'm assuming that all of these other things that we're discussing, like the times and the amount of space and all those things, are basically regulated by OLCC. Am I correct?
Yeah, our research was just on the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
And then, and the municipal code. It did not go into any other statutes.
But I'm just saying, I would assume, since they don't have all this fancy dancy stuff that we do, that it's because they are depending upon the fact that OLCC has its own criteria involving the serving of alcohol in particular establishments and the time and that sort of thing. Am I correct? So the zoning just comes down to the area around, and that's what we're dealing with now, is just simply the buffer zone. Am I correct?
Yeah, location issues are generally thought of, as a zoning, in terms of where certain types of businesses can be located. That falls under the zoning
Right,
rules of the
and
city.
I'm hearing in this other, looking at the staff report, the fact that Ashland, Medford, Jacksonville, they don't have zoning, they have no buffers, correct?
Yeah, I think what you're asking is, in those municipalities, they don't have an additional layer of regulation. We have an additional layer of regulation with our adult use. They don't. They just rely on LCC to determine what needs to have that sticker or not, and that's it. There isn't that additional regulation. We have provided this additional regulation of adult use to the definition that we have defined right now.
Thank you, that's what I was looking for.
Brian?
I just wanted to follow up on DJ's question about the 2 public hearings. If we did circumvent UAPC, would we have 2 public hearings at the council level then? Or Mark?
If you had 2 hearings with the UAPC,
If we decided to circumvent UAPC, would we have 2 public hearings at the council level, or would it go to 1?
well, it would be amended by ordinance, and so if it's not unanimous, you would have to have 2 hearings. You'd have to have a second reading hearing, but it wouldn't need to be 2 public hearings.
Okay.
You could have 1 public hearing, make a decision, even if it's not unanimous, have it just set for a second reading vote at the next meeting.
Okay, and if council decided to scrap the ordinance completely, does that go through the same process, or is it just we decide to do it and it's done?
Yeah, you just, either you vote it down or council decides to table it or whatever, then you don't really have to follow any process.
All right, thanks.
DJ?
So I'm just finding it a little confusing. May I ask why it's demonstrated in the presentation that 2 hearings would be required?
Sure. I think Mark's correct, and that was really just community development staff putting what the standard procedure is for development code amendments, not including what that option is. So that,
Sure.
yeah,
Okay.
it's just reflecting what the ordinance is for a normal development code amendment.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
I have a quick question on, can you just clarify that marijuana businesses, I believe they fall under a different regulation?
They do. Yeah, there's a completely different Oregon revised statute that regulates marijuana.
And do you remember how far apart they need to be?
1,000 feet
Okay.
is the required separation there between dispensaries, and
Okay,
retail
so that wouldn't be
establishments.
affected by this ordinance, but it would theoretically remove or reduce the buffer zones if the council were to decide to change. It would change our buffer zones, but they would still need to be 1,000 feet from each other. Is that,
Correct.
okay. DJ?
So clarifying on that, from what I heard, that the adult use ordinance and the buffers between cannabis dispensaries are mutually exclusive?
Correct.
And that the 1,000 feet is mandated by the state or is recommended by the state, and the council could adjust that if they wish to?
Permits us to mandate a buffer of up to that amount.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Brad? All right, seeing none, we will open it up for public comment. And because we do have a number of people here, I'm just going to quickly read this to you all. This is an opportunity for the public to address the City Council on items related to the adult business ordinance. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to address the council as one body, not to individuals. Council may consider, I'll skip that line. Just this meeting will proceed in an effective and courteous manner. Citizens and council members will be allowed to state their positions in an atmosphere free from slander, threats, or other personal attacks. Signs or placards, outbursts of applause, campaigning for public office, and other disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. With that in mind, I think I'm just, Aaron?
I just want to note, Mayor, Council, that we do have some here and we also have some overflow, so there will be some transition. When we get through here, we'll have to send some out as we allow for some others to come
Okay.
in.
Julie? No? Okay, so we'll allow the people in this room to speak first, but just after you leave, please leave. And if you want to, you can go to the overflow room where you'll be able to hear us continue, but leaving will allow other people who are waiting outside to be able to come in. So with that said, if you want to speak on this issue, please stand up. We could just follow one another. The light will change to yellow. It means you have 30 seconds left of your 3 minutes. And please state your name. Can you speak? Is it on?
Oh,
Okay, yeah, just don't touch the mic, don't touch the microphone.
okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. I haven't been to one of these before. So my name is Michael. I'm a Grants Pass resident, and I'm for completely scrapping the ordinance altogether and so we're more in line with Medford and Jacksonville. This seems to be an extremely excessive, restrictive ordinance, and I think one of the most beautiful things about Southern Oregon is the spirit of entrepreneurship, especially in the winery and the brewing industry, and that synergy. It employs a lot of businesses, whether it's Bend or Medford or the brewing industry has brought a lot of people, a lot of good jobs, and has a lot of businesses have been very successful, and it has really improved the economy in a lot of these towns. And I believe Grants Pass is on the verge, if not already, on the glide path to having this industry just boom. And removing these restrictions would bring a lot of much needed jobs, especially in the area of COVID, where, it's really decimated the business community. With the vaccines, there's light at the end of the tunnel, or at least we certainly hope so. And this could be a mechanism for our economy to boom again and to employ a lot of, good people, in town. And we need less restriction and more freedom, not the opposite. And we could be a trailblazer in this particular area where it opens up a lot of good jobs and good business, and it also gives alternatives to younger people too, having day use or having adults and children together. We're all adults. We can do it. We're big boys and girls. And here's the thing: as I went to Europe, and this is normal in Europe. The families hang out together all the time, and I just feel like this could be an economic positive for our community. And I'm hoping we can just scrap it all together and be in line with other communities that are seeing an economic revival, or will hopefully soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please tell us your name.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Moore. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. This is nice. I haven't done this for many, many moons. I moved here in 1989. My family and I opened the Book Depot in the old Kesterson building in 1990. We expanded into the space right next door, which Big Phil's used to have many, many moons ago, and we continued to grow. In 1993, we moved across the street to the Caveman Plaza, where at the peak, we had 3 spaces over there, Oregon Books and Galaxy Books and Games. Then in 97, I opened up a store downtown next to Grants Pass Pharmacy called More Games. All of this is just expanding. And then in 1998, we moved to Oregon Books from downtown out to the Grants Pass Shopping Center, where it stayed until 2009 when we moved it back downtown to the corner of 7th and E, where it resides today. I bring these points to illustrate the fact that you need to be able to offer growth to established businesses that are already here. Not necessarily new ones that want to just come in and do something, but we have an established business that really seeks to go into a space that's been vacant for, we've all seen that space. It's one of those spaces you just drive by. It's a big vacant building right as you drive into town. It would be really nice to have a nice thriving business in there that can, increase the downtown prosperity. Regarding the adult use ordinance, I remember in 1994 when this came up, because I had 3 spaces across the street from it. And at the time it seemed, well, yeah, we're doing a lot of stuff here to be sure that this guy doesn't open up a strip bar on the corner of 5th and G. I mean, it was crazy. I was really surprised at the time that, well, the council was able to do it. Now, I don't think in today's environment you could do such a thing. It's nice to see that there are other areas that have certain restrictions for certain different types of adult material, but I think that time is, we have smarter minds now and can deal with things a little bit better. My wife and I have been patrons of Vice Brewery for shortly after it opened. We've been going there consistently. We enjoy trivia night. We enjoy a lot of things. And I know Sean Weiss personally as just a person of great character and a really sound business mind. He's grown this little brewery into something that was really thriving pre-COVID, and even during COVID, he did everything he could to keep it going. I encourage all of you guys to just listen to everybody. I was really surprised to hear about how different this is in just our region. When I pulled up the agenda, I was surprised to see how many other areas have already addressed this, and we're just a little bit slow to catch up. So I appreciate you guys' time. Please keep this idea in mind, and I certainly hope that we can modify some things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Michelle Parsons.
Can you please speak into the mic?
Hello, my name's Michelle Parsons. And I just feel like everything that's grandfathered in, the way the city is right now, it has enough recreation for adults. And, and why reduce our morals and standards down further and bring danger and corrupt things closer to our children? It's scary out there on the streets already with the regulations we have. And we are the seat of this county, and I believe that we should stand alone and we should hold up to what our elders have already established in this community. So if people with ill thoughts, intent, and actions want more of that around them, maybe they'll move out of the city and we'll have a cleaner seat in our county. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else here to speak?
I'd like to speak.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bill Grumwald. I'm a disabled combat veteran. I just think this ordinance is really old. It's been said commerce really needs to kind of take over or just take foot. This ordinance just needs to go. That's all I have to say. I would like, hopefully tonight, that it gets ended and scrapped. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kathy Frizzell. I'm a fairly recent transplant to Grants Pass, and my husband and I enjoy going out and spending time with friends, with their kids, but it's really nice to be out when you don't have to deal with the kids screaming, running around and doing that. So I would like to see this ordinance scrapped, I guess the best word for it is, so that we can go out and enjoy our time with when the kids aren't there. So that's all I had to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have other people in an overflow room? Just because. Okay. Go ahead. State
Hi,
your
good
name.
afternoon. My name's Evan Lamont. I'm representing, the Oregon Cannabis Collective over here. We operate 4LCC license here in the county. And we've been trying real hard to get into Grants Pass for quite a few years now. So a lot of the conversation that happened here with the council, we were just looking at possibly opening up adult use for just the alcohol is kind of what the gist I got, at least from the proposal. So I would just encourage the council to be fair across the board, and if we're going to look at changing it, to look at changing for all adult use. You know, we've missed out. We've had quite a few buildings that we found interesting that we put offers in on just to find out that we weren't able to sell. So we have Grants Pass citizens that are missing out on the opportunity to sell their real estate. You know, you guys are missing out on the 3% tax you guys would be taking in. You know, if we're going to give this capitalism thing a try, let's give it a try, and let's not try to really overregulate would be my recommendation. Let the market decide, and let the citizens decide where they want to shop and spend their money. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, councilors and mayor. My name is Sean Weiss, and I am the owner and brewmaster of Weiss Brewing Company. Like all businesses in the restaurant and bar industry, this has been a hard-hitting year for us. And to add to that hardship, on Thanksgiving Day, our landlords gave us an eviction notice and told us that by February 1st, we needed to be out. They are taking over our current location because they own the building and they're looking to expand themselves. With obvious COVID-19 restrictions, it's been really hard to save up the money to be able to expand and find a good building. We are moved in now to the corner of 6th and E, right at the start of our wonderful downtown area. We also want to show the community hope. Hope that once COVID ends, there will be normalcy. We are opening around 6,000 square feet for families till 9 p.m. With great food and great beverages, including fun drinks for minors. They could go have fun, play arcades, and have a great time. Part of our building, there's also 2,000 square feet. That would be our adult-only section that we would have our brewing equipment. Just to manufacture bigger is an adult area as far as OLCC is concerned as well. So this ordinance restricts me for even brewing beer in downtown. After 9 p.m., the whole area would become adults only. Being a parent myself, and I love my son dearly, there's some times that we as adults need to get away from our kids. We have all been there. This is such a massive hit for our tourism industry that this will be gigantic for our city. This ordinance is blocking Grants Pass from expanding and creating more jobs downtown. Us and Gold Hill, we're the only two cities in all of Oregon that has an alcoholic restrictive license ordinance on business licenses. I'm asking you for the sake of small businesses to get rid of this ordinance. Especially in these hard times, we need your help. Changing it will only bring up issues later down the road. For instance, take the Dutch Bros Football Academy, went in long after this ordinance, and it is now affecting us today. 3 minutes is going pretty quick. In conclusion, I urge you to take action on this tonight. This is currently hurting local businesses right now, trying to expand and create more jobs in the area. We do not need to worry about biker bars and strip clubs. We don't have to fear what happened 30 to 40 years ago. We are stronger as a community than that. The worst thing you'll see at my location is people fighting over as if Star Trek is better than Star Wars, and I'll have to intervene and tell them it's all about Battlestar Galactica. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment?
Good evening, everybody. It feels like ages since I got up and talked to you guys, so it's good to see some new faces. My name's Carrie, and I'm the owner of Diamond Cannabis, along with my partner, James Sparman. We just came out tonight to hear what everyone had to say and what's going on. I keep hearing the word scrap, and I think that's a little extreme. I do think that there is some things that need to be considered for this ordinance and for our town to continue to grow for entrepreneurship. I do want you guys to consider that cannabis, sex, alcohol, they're all different topics, but they're all adult use. I think that if you guys have any questions about OLCC or want a connection to them, I'm happy to facilitate that. I'm an OLCC representative for a lot of different people in the state, and I want nothing but to be actively participant with Grants Pass to make sure this is handled the right way, because I grew up here. I'm a lady caver, and I'm happy to see our little town stay a Friday night little town lights, but still allow people to enjoy themselves in the evenings. But please, I'm an open door. Come tour the dispensary. Let's talk about cannabis whenever you guys want to.
Thank you. All right, is there any further comment on adult business use?
Sorry, I'm a little out of breath. I just ran over from the next room. I'm Maria. I'm 24. I grew up in this town my whole life. Over the years, I've seen a lot of businesses and clubs open for youth, young adults. A lot of them have been shut down. It's been ruined by other people, and that's fairly sad. I currently work for Evergrande, but I also work for Vice Brewing Company over the past year. And I've personally been told by OLCC that we are one of the nicest bars in town. We follow every guideline that we're supposed to. We open our doors up to every walk of life. And I think keeping the ordinances, it's sad. Personally, I am going through a hardship because we can't open our bar. I'm a single mom. I have to work 2 jobs. Opening it up to the minors would be great during the daytime, but we do need our adult time by ourselves. And, sorry, I'm like nervous. Personally, I think that keeping this ordinance is ruining our economic here in our community, and we need to get rid of it. It's like other people said before, we need more freedoms and less restrictions. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think that may be our last speaker on this subject. Is anyone else here from the public to speak on it? Anyone in another room that we're aware of? No? Okay. We'll open it up for council discussion. Joel?
Well, I would just encourage our citizens not to look to the city government for them to get time away from their kids. I think that's an individual responsibility that it doesn't require a city code for that. And I can understand trying to get some arguments to support my point of view or your point of view, but don't give me that power. Okay, I don't think that would be appropriate for us to do a city code so that you can spend time away from your kids. If you need to spend time away from your kids, spend time away from your kids. You have all the freedom in the world to do that. As far as this call to action and what we do, it seems like what we have existing is over-restrictive. And whether we put in a reduced buffer or whether we go with the suggested amendment, or get rid of it at all. I do know that there's been several people that have talked to me in the downtown area that said if some places came in or if the nature of the downtown area started to change, and it always changes, they would be concerned and they would step forward. So if all of a sudden you got a bunch of strip joints going in downtown or an adult bookstore or a bunch of murders happening, whatever, that this isn't the end all. And the government doesn't have that power either. You know, in terms of which alternative we pick, I think we got a lot of freedom to choose that, and I think they'll all work. And again, I want to emphasize to parents, if you need to get away from your kids for a night, you know, be responsible, do that, make some arrangements. Don't ask for a city code so that you can do that.
Brian.
Thanks, Sarah. I have a question for Aaron and Mark, and it's around timelines. I understand that if we scrap it, it's done tonight. If we modify it, can you just speak a bit to how long it would take to go through that process from now until it's done?
So I think that maybe I misunderstood your question earlier when you were talking about scrapping it. I understood that to mean you just scrap the whole idea of looking at changing this. Now I think what you meant was we just scuttle this code and repeal it. That's the same process. I mean, it's you adopt an ordinance repealing it. So if I misunderstood you originally, sorry.
And so the approximate timeline for that would?
Well, an ordinance, it would be an ordinance, and that takes 30 days to take effect unless it's enacted as an emergency. Council would have to make that decision if this would be an emergency situation. And also, this is not noticed for actually having an action taken tonight. So there's no accompanying ordinance that council can really act on. I think what we're hoping for is to get direction from council tonight, whether we should bring back an ordinance repealing this or an ordinance modifying it or whatever the case may be.
Thanks.
Rick?
I'm all in favor of the opportunity for the brewery to go in and for them to be operational and to have the hours of operation they want and the type of atmosphere they want, whether it's for adults only and so forth. But, so I'm really still want to preserve the downtown, the character of that area, and I would be willing to consider reduction in the distance involved in the zone or modification of the definition. But I still would want to see some portion of that intact. Thank you.
Vanessa?
This agenda item is listed under council action. So Mark, can you please outline as to why this body is unable to take action on this tonight?
Well, because there's no notice given that council is going to be taking action, and there's nothing in writing prepared for council to adopt, nothing like that.
It's my understanding that we should be deliberating and coming up with that decision this evening and not ahead of the meeting. So I'm still unclear as to why we're unable to take action this evening.
Well, I think the action you could take would be directing staff to bring something back to council to act on, because if you're going to amend an ordinance, you have to have an ordinance in front of you. I think that proposed ordinance would be part of the notice, part of the agenda ahead of time for the public to see. Because going into this, all that you see on an agenda is just a discussion on adult use. There's no notice that perhaps council is going to consider an ordinance that repeals it or modifies it or anything. So I don't think that it would be in keeping with public meetings law and the notice requirements to go ahead and actually take any action modifying the ordinance tonight. I think tonight the council should deliberate to the extent necessary to direct staff as far as what to do in terms of bringing back an ordinance for another meeting.
I think there's a bit of a difference in definition of action going on right here, and we don't have an ordinance in front of us in order to do a first reading of an ordinance, but you certainly could make a motion indicating what you would like, what direction you'd like to take. So we're changing our process here a little bit, everybody, from what was done in the past, and it's caused a little bit of confusion. But yeah, you can definitely make a motion tonight to pursue some sort of direction if you want to.
So since this is a land use ordinance, it does require DLCD notice.
All right. Who's next?
35-day DLCD notice.
Okay, we wouldn't be finished tonight, but we could definitely indicate a direction, a decision that the council would like to make tonight. Brian?
Thanks. So I'll just keep this moving here, and I'm kind of in between two different decisions. One part of me says that we should just go ahead and repeal the entire ordinance, and another part of me says we should bring the buffer from 1,000 feet down to maybe something around 200 feet, while also taking the categories of, the daycares, parks, and all that, and removing recreational facilities, which is really just a category for the Oregon Football Academy, which is right in the core of downtown. So if you look at that map, it really kind of gums up the situation downtown with that specific category. So I would be in favor of removing that category and going to 200 feet, or possibly repealing the whole ordinance if there's appetite for that.
Valerie?
Well, before I go repealing anything, I think more than anything, what I'm least clear about is OLCC, what are their rules per se in an alcohol place? I mean, do they have hours after 9 o'clock? I mean, there's still a lot of things that I'm really not sure of. I agree, like you said, the football academy has just kind of wreaked havoc on our downtown in terms of, bottling it up. And I do agree, but I also think that the football academy is not doing anything after 9 o'clock. The daycares are not usually open after 9 o'clock. So you always hate, to have those things have that kind of an impact when they're not really happening later. So I'm kind of like where you are. I'm not exactly sure. Something needs to change. There's no doubt in my mind that something needs to change. That they were too restrictive. But I'm not sure at this point, without a little bit more time to look at what needs to change. And I also feel, and I do understand that the people who are here tonight are the ones that are pushing to have it done, but I do think there are people out there who probably don't know about what's going on tonight. And so if we were to do something, then they're going to flare up and say, well, we didn't know that was happening. So I'm not exactly sure where to go, but I want to definitely go through at least another meeting, public hearing, to get where we're going. And I would just personally like to look through the OLCC rules. So I had a clearer rule if I could just let it all go and let OLCC take care of it. Because a part of me feels that's kind of what the rest of the world does, is that they just say OLCC's rules are so tight. And I've heard that, the OLCC, they come down like a hammer. If indeed their rules are so stringent, then you're right. We're just double whamming them, and I don't want to do that. But I don't know that I've heard the whole story. So I don't know whether we just need to put together some kind of ordinance, have another public hearing, and let it be advertised and let everybody know that this is their chance to come in and say something.
Joel, Vanessa, Rob.
So, I understand what Brian just said, and I understand what Val just said, and I understand what Rick said. And looking at what was presented to us, turns over the alcohol to the state, and doesn't regulate that at all. And so I don't know, Brian, why we wouldn't support that. Because then the only other adult uses that would not be supported would be ones that probably why we had the most restrictive to start with, that we don't need anymore. And that one seemed to address it, plus seemed to address the ambiguity and turning it over to the state for alcohol sales, which I thought was appropriate. So I don't know, just some food for thought.
Vanessa?
With all of these conversations I've heard this evening, I'm concerned of any double standards we may have as a community by allowing a Racino just a couple hundred yards from the YMCA, yet saying on the flip side, if you are less than 10,000 feet, you are unable to make that kind of move. So to be clear, with my point of view, I'm in support of a full repeal of the adult use buffer.
Rob?
Yeah, I really appreciate Vanessa's point of view. And from a, we'll say, a freedom of expression perspective, from a free market perspective, clearly the complete repeal makes the most sense to me as well. With that said, I think if we look at things that we travel, things that we enjoy when we travel, we enjoy the breweries in Bend, we enjoy brew pubs in Portland, we enjoy that a lot. Face it, it's hot, it's happening, it makes a lot of money for a lot of people, and for some reason we have an ordinance that may prevent one of our brew pubs from just expanding, which is just, and I think everyone agrees that's just really illogical. So the question really is to what to do about it, because we all want to support small businesses getting bigger. We all want to support what's hot, what's making people money, what tourists want to enjoy. That's all really clear. So I'm actually, very much in favor of repealing the entire ordinance. I could also see and understand the reason why some people might want to reduce the buffer down to 200 feet. That's probably the bare minimum that I could ever look at myself in the mirror and know that I voted for. But what Brad presented tonight, I think, addresses kind of a different approach, the potential new definition for an eating and drinking establishment that would not be considered adult use. Am I understanding that correctly, Mark? That what Brad proposed tonight is basically creating it just happens to be, okay, that it would cover a place like Vice's proposed place, but it would be outside of the adult use completely. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the intent of that suggested language.
Okay, so that for me also works really well, because we're not realistically, I'm a free speech person. There's no doubt freedom of expression is really important to me, as some in the community might not appreciate when sometimes I write letters to the editor and so forth, but that's who I am. But in any event, the fact that most people, we're not looking at squashing our economic vitality by preventing strip joints. Like, I don't think anybody's going to argue here, in the past, or anywhere else in Grants Pass, that, gee, we could really explode economically if we would just allow strip joints. I don't think anybody's saying that. On the other hand, if we were to be less restrictive and more supportive of brew pubs and businesses like that, we're all seeing that that's an economic benefit to our community, and it could be really large. So I could be really okay with redefining the business of basically a brew pub as falling outside of our adult use ordinance completely. That way we don't necessarily have to remove it, although that would possibly be my first choice, but we could redefine it. We're keeping whatever feeling of safety some people might have by disallowing strip joints and so forth in our downtown, that would remain. We could also promote, though, what we all, I think, would agree, is the type of business that's really, really profitable and beneficial for communities right now. And you're hearing that from someone who really basically doesn't drink alcohol, and yet I would still completely support that kind of business because I know it's popular, I know it's good for our downtown, the ones that we have, and so I would support the redefining of the brew pubs as falling outside of our adult ordinance. That might actually be very simple as well. And I would also support removing the entire ordinance. I would have a really hard time supporting just keeping the smaller buffer. I think that's kind of, that's a back door that I don't really want to have to sneak out of, so to speak.
DJ, then Rick?
Sure. I'm going to start with the staff recommendation of the mixed use. I think that really convolutes the issue that we have before us. The spirit of my understanding of this issue is free market freedom, allowing for businesses to operate with current restrictions. So I'm not in favor of that, whereas I appreciate thinking outside the box here. Going to the OLCC, they're particularly regulatory, as we can all understand, and then using Sean's example is he also possesses federal licensing, which you could imagine are even more stringent, and complying with those can be a bear, and I think he's done that in spades, and I think that we can expect that, because if you're not in compliance, then you don't have a business. So I'm not concerned about just letting OLCC and federal liquor control doing their job in our downtown. So there was, from what I understand, a few years ago, a stay on this ordinance that actually allowed certain businesses to expand and in some regards flourish and survive. As soon as we put a stay on this ordinance, many businesses started operating with their adult use, and now they're known for it, and now they're doing well in our downtown corridor. And I find that as evidence of businesses being able to survive in our downtown without this ordinance. Furthermore, I understand that there's businesses inside of buffer uses that are not in compliance, and that is one of the reasons that their business model worked. So whereas I'm not advocating that we go around policing that per se, I would just like to say that there are businesses in that downtown area and in the buffer zone that operate that are not in compliance. So if we are really all about supporting this ordinance, then we better start regulating it and seeing what would happen, because it would be my imagination that those businesses would not appreciate that so much. I want to touch on the UAPC issue. I don't think this should go to UAPC, whereas it is a land use issue. I think this is a council board decision. Respecting UAPC for what they are, this is definitely something that we should be handling at a council level. I want to go into sort of the one-way street that's been operated under. Let's use the football academy as just an example. They were allowed to put the football academy there adjacent to adult use businesses, but adult use businesses cannot put their business next to a football academy. I find that very strange, given that the spirit of this ordinance is to prevent educational facilities adjacent to adult use businesses. So there's kind of a, something that I've taken exception to in the code. We can always reevaluate our decisions anytime we choose. We can reevaluate what we do tonight anytime that we choose so. I think that we've had plenty of input. I think we've given a lot of time for our constituents to tell us what they think about this. I think we have just tonight 7-1 remove it. And that's more or less congruent with the feedback that I've had over the past year and a half since we've been considering this. I have an overwhelming support from the constituents that I've talked to repeal this. Let's see here. And then going on what you said, Vanessa, I think that's, there's I can't remember the word that you used, but in regards to YMCA, that's an educational facility, and we're allowing an adult use to go right next to it. And going back to the spirit of this ordinance, that is just against what the spirit of this ordinance kind of dictates for businesses. And that gets into a little bit of discriminatory territory. If you have a large enough business, i.e. deep enough pockets, this city will allow you to operate an adult use business wherever you see fit. And I don't think that's fair for our small businesses. So that gets on to most of the things that I wanted to bring up, except for entertaining reduction of the buffer. I'm not in favor of reducing the buffer. I'm in favor of completely repealing this ordinance, because the spirit of this is economic growth and detrimental impact on our economy in downtown. And I have heard no appreciable logic to keep the ordinance in place, and therefore my position is to completely repeal this ordinance.
Rick and then Joel.
Well, I know I'm in minority. I appreciate Rob's comments on looking at redefining the definition. I would be in favor of that. Also, I'd be in favor of a 400-foot buffer. but I just feel revoking the ordinance just opens the door for other opportunities, and while they're not there at the moment, I want to be protective of Grants Pass, and that's why we sit here, not only protect the businesses, but protect the town and provide characteristics that we appreciate. But I will accept whatever that the council wants to go with, but that's my position. Thank you.
Joel, then Valerie.
Yeah, I also like the suggestion that was presented tonight. I think it addresses the issue at hand, allows the economic development to continue, and in the future, it limits having to come back and revisit the code, because it could open the door to other things that would not be good for those businesses or for the nature of downtown. So that's where I'm at. Supporting Rick and what Rob said he could support, and perhaps what Brian, I don't know where Val's at.
Valerie?
You know, I'm not really sure where I'm at either, but that's because I kind of came into this with a discussion part in mind. I'm of the old school that we really discussed it more in workshops and then had a firmer stand by the time we came here, and so I'm still not firmly stand. I would like to see if it's possible to somebody to go back to look once more at Brad's compromise to thoroughly understand that. And I will just say a lot of this is because I've never been in this business. I don't understand this business. I do understand that we're too restrictive for the purpose to well, on premise. So basically you're saying that this basically makes it kind of like downtown ends up kind of being like Applebee's or anywhere else. Is that correct? Because as it is currently with Applebee's or any of those places, they have an adult, they have a family-oriented place, and then they have a certain percentage of the area that is meant for the bar. Is that correct?
So I want to clarify, since you're asking that question.
Yes.
This only applies if they maintain their hours of operation to open to minors throughout the whole time. If they close their doors to minors at 9 p.m. and then it was adult only, they would not comply with the 30% or more, 30% of gross floor area. It would be 100%, so that would not comply. So in order for this to work, it'd work with the business plan that they always have to stay open to minors.
Okay, so that, thank you for clarifying that, because that's where I was unsure, because I thought, like I said, this was more of an Applebee's type of plan, and then I didn't understand how that would work for downtown. You know, actually, I think the more I listened to this and the more I've gone through and had this discussion, I think I do go more upon the line of getting rid of it, and just putting an ordinance out there because at this point in time, we're just giving the direction. And obviously, if we give the direction that goes out there that says, you know, this is what we're going to do, then obviously we can count on our newspaper to get the information out there. And then if there's a big, then the second time we'll know. Like I said, know people that are in favor of it. I also happen to know people that are not. But in looking at the other jurisdictions and what they have, I have to admit that we are probably strangling the ability for businesses, and that is, I mean, breweries, wineries, all those things. I mean, that is a part of our culture, and I think that is something that we should not regulate. So that would be where I am right now.
Brian, then Vanessa.
Well, let's keep this party moving. I move to repeal the adult use ordinance.
I think you mean that you move to ask staff to draft up the necessary legislation to repeal the adult use ordinance.
Yes, I move to do that.
Okay, Mark wasn't even listening, but. Okay. Okay, Vanessa with the second. All right, discussion. We'll start with you, Brian. Did you have anything? No? Vanessa? No? Okay, DJ.
Just a brief comment about maintaining the buffers that you said, Rick. 400 feet will not allow Vice Brewing to operate in downtown. So the highlighted building that you see on your illustration there is the northerly portion. 400 feet would encapsulate the building structure on the southern end, and he would not be able to operate adult use. There's two buildings there.
Two buildings?
Yeah, the one that's highlighted is only the larger of the two buildings that he intends to have a mixed use in. There's a building adjacent on the south side that 400 feet would, he'd be in the 400 feet buffer, and therefore he wouldn't be able to operate. Yeah.
All right, further comment? Rob?
Yeah, I appreciate Aaron clarifying the, what I didn't see and wasn't really explained is about the inability of a business to be able to close to minors under that proposed modification. For that reason, I think I would have to support, well, I shouldn't say for that reason and all the other great points that especially DJ made and everyone else made, I would support abolishing the adult use ordinance completely.
All right, Mark, do you have any explanation for us of what steps are involved in repealing an ordinance?
Yeah, so it would be, you would have an ordinance placed in front of the council at the next meeting, and the ordinance would just simply state that the sections, whatever, I don't know what the GPMC sites are off the top of my head, are hereby repealed. And then the council would vote on it, and they would be repealed.
Okay, thank you. All right, ready to vote? All right. Yes, DJ.
I'm sorry, Mark, I just need further clarification. So let's just entertain hypotheticals. We move to bring that ordinance change to the next meeting. And at that next meeting, we move to repeal the ordinance. At that point, then there's a 35-day period that we need to go to the land use. That's what I would like clarification on, is ultimate timelines entertaining hypothetical of repealing the issue.
So Brad's gonna talk about the DLCD notice step that we have to go through.
Yeah, so it involves just logging onto the portal of DLCD and, putting exactly what our local amendment is about, citing, the chapter and verse, putting the language in there, uploading it, and then DLCD, staff has the opportunity to look at that. We can upload that at any time. There's not like there's a deadline during the month when we have to do that. So basically, from when that is done, that has to be a minimum of 35 days prior to a public hearing. So we could not hold the public hearing any sooner than 35 days from when that notice is put onto DLCD portal.
So with the decisions that are being entertained this evening, would that trigger being able to go into that portal and notify DLCD? And then we wouldn't be able to have the public hearing until that 35 days has passed?
We have to have the draft document to upload.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then, so this motion is we're asking for the draft document, presumably it'll upload there, then we wait that 35 days, then we have a public hearing about administering the ordinance change.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Good, thank you.
And I think I have enough direction that we could upload that document right now. It's pretty simple ordinance language.
All right, further discussion? Okay, we're voting on whether to move forward with directing staff to bring back the necessary steps to repeal the adult business ordinance. Brian?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Rick?
I'm in favor of the brewery, but no, I don't want to open the doors. Thank you.
DJ?
Yes.
Joel?
No.
Vanessa?
Yes.
And Rob?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-2. So we'll bring that back at a future meeting. All right, we're going to take a step back on our agenda here. We have a council action item A, resolution calling for a measure to be placed on the ballot of the May 18th, 2021 election.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. So with this presentation, I'm gonna handle two resolutions. They're action items 1A and 1B. They dovetail together. So one of the resolutions would place the measure on the ballot for public safety, and that includes approval of the caption, question, and summary. And then the other resolution would approve the explanatory statement that goes into the voter's pamphlet. These resolutions relate to the council goals of community safety and cooperative shared leadership. So council directed staff to prepare documents for referring the public safety levy to voters in May. And a small subcommittee of council gathered and recommended some changes from past ballot titles and explanatory statements that we've used in the past, and I worked with Councilor Lovelace on hopefully improving the product that we have for you tonight. So the caption, the ballot title consists of the caption, the question, and the summary. So I'm not going to read every word on here. It's up on the screen for everybody to see, but the caption states the topic. The question asks the question of what people are voting on. And these, of course, are all subject to word limitations, and we've gone through it. I think I've checked each component about 17 times because, boy, I just can't imagine getting this thing thrown back at us for exceeding the word limits. So then we have the summary, and the summary is just what it says. It summarizes what a yes vote would do, goes on to summarize what public safety services including not just what you think of as far as patrol cars, but gang prevention, 9/11 dispatch, detectives, etc. It also includes fire services, which are pretty broadly encompassing. It goes on to say what a no vote would do, and that would result in a 22% loss in the current public safety funding. And it goes on to estimate what the annual impact financially would be for the average Grants Pass homeowner. Then we have the explanatory statement. That's a 500-word statement. And that repeats a lot of the information that's contained within the summary. It does go through and give a history of tax levies. It discusses our current property tax rate of $4.13 per thousand, and the levy, of course, would be in addition to that. So it goes on to say that approval would maintain the current police and fire services as they are, and again goes into a list of what those include. And then in addition to, in the tax impact section, in addition to giving an estimate on the tax impact to the average Grants Pass homeowner, it also estimates the revenue that the levy would bring in. So it's a 3-year levy. Call to action date, we have to submit the materials to the county clerk by February 26th. So council will need to make a decision soon. So potential actions: adopt the resolutions as provided to you, or amend them, including possibly amending the proposed rate, or just forego a levy altogether.
Questions for Mark? No? Okay, Brian?
Thank you, Mark. I just have, and this is, I'm totally splitting hairs here, but I do want to ask the question anyway. On page 4 of the packet, under the section where it talks about, well, I guess my question is this language set in stone, or if council tonight wanted to modify it, is that possible, or is the time frame too short?
No, it's actually not set in stone, but if we're changing things too much, just bear in mind we'd have to go through and check the word count. And you know, when you look at this, sometimes you have to take a second look and think, well, is this going to be is this truly impartial? And what may seem impartial to me or to you may not seem impartial to someone in Salem looking at it. And, I've seen, varying interpretations from folks at Secretary of State's office on what constitutes impartiality, and sometimes I really don't agree with them. But I'm confident that what we have here is fair, impartial, legal, and meets the word count. But absolutely, it's council's purview to do what it wants.
Thanks.
Further questions? All right. Thank you,
Thank
Mark.
you.
Are there any members of the public here to speak on the topic of the public safety levy? No? Okay. I'll open it up for council discussion. Vanessa?
We've been working so hard on the budget deficit surrounding this topic that we haven't actually had the conversation of the dollar amount for the levy. So I think I would like to hear from my fellow councilors how you guys feel about the $1.79, if you're okay with that. Personally, I'm okay with the $1.79, so I just think I'd like to hear from everybody on this as well.
DJ, then Rick?
Sure, yeah, Vanessa, thanks for asking, I'll respond to that. We did try for $1.89, which was still vastly short of what we needed to make ends meet. So my personal sentiment is this levy does need to be higher. However, our constituents did respond to 189 as no. And I think that we're appropriately responding to 179, understanding that we have quite a few budget cuts to make with that number, as we would also have with the $1.89.
Rick?
I agree with what DJ has said, but also recognizing the $1.79, the reason I like it is we can use the language, it's a renewal instead of a new levy. So I think that's also an advantage.
Valerie?
Yeah, I'm just going to echo the same thing, because we did $1.89, which I was very much supportive, because I recognized I didn't want to make any of the cuts that we're having to make, which we would have had to make anyway. But I think, we had to look at it as the people spoke, and a renewal is what we need to go for, as we need to come together as a council. I think it's important that we all are in support of the $1.79, because I think all of us realize how painful it is even to get to this point. So I can't imagine having to go 22% more in cuts. So anyway, I'm in favor of $1.79.
Brian?
Yeah, for reasons previously mentioned, I am also in favor of $1.79. I would add one comment. The reason I asked that question is because on page 4, under the section where it says what a no vote will do, the second sentence says not funding the levy may result in a reduction or elimination of the service listed above. And it also says there's a 22% loss in funding. I think there's a case to be made to change just one word, from not funding the levy may result in a reduction, but not funding the levy will result in a reduction. And I think that's impartial and accurate, and I just wanted to throw that out there.
We tried. We tried. It didn't work.
Councilor Lovelace and I had that discussion, and I disagree because, and I totally understand where you're coming from. However, when you say that it will reduce, so you're talking about where it says under what a no vote will do, result in a 22%, not funding the levy may result in a reduction. Is that, okay. Well, so the other side of that coin, someone would say, well, if the levy's not funded, there's no telling exactly how the city would appropriate its budget. So potentially the city could slash all park services, or could just eliminate the planning department or something, and use all of that revenue saved so that those services are still remaining. And I speak from experience in how the election division looks at these sorts of things, and I advise that we keep it as it is.
Fair enough, thanks.
Thank you.
Rob?
I really appreciate that, Mark. We've had wording on prior levies that I actually felt was not neutral at all, and I'm not even sure how it got through. We used to have wording in there that passage of the levy will ensure that certain things would happen. And every time I would see that, I knew that that just wasn't true. So I really appreciate Valerie's efforts, and if Vanessa was responsible, or anyone else who was responsible for making this wording more neutral. I think, to Brian's point, I would feel totally fine, and that may be even better, if it said not funding the levy will likely result in a reduction or elimination of the services listed above. But I'm okay with May, and I totally understand and appreciate Mark's position. Will likely would also be maybe even preferential to me.
All right, what are you going to do? Brian?
I move to approve the resolution calling for a measure to be placed on the ballot on May 18th, 2021 for a renewal of the current local option taxes for public safety.
Thank
Point
you.
Point of order, don't we have public?
Oh, we asked for public earlier, thank you. Moved by Brian, seconded by Vanessa. Discussion on the motion? All right, we'll move forward with a vote. Brian?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
And Rob?
Yes.
Motion carries. And now on to the resolution with the explanatory statement. Brian?
Yeah, I move to approve the explanatory statement and submit it to the Josephine County Clerk to be included in the county prepared voters pamphlet.
Thank you. Seconded by Valerie. Discussion on the okay, let's vote again. Brian?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, item C on our agenda is a resolution adopting the city's strategic plan for 2021-22. And we have the city manager with a presentation.
Well, good evening, Mayor, council members of the public. It's my honor to do this presentation. I'm just standing here providing the information. All the hard work was done by multiple groups of individuals and organizations, et cetera, including yourself as the policy board and your advisory committees, the citizens and staff who all worked on getting something like this prepared, and I have the honor of providing you the information this evening. Subject and summary is council's adoption of its recently finished annual strategic plan. This supports your goal of leadership by providing the working basis for evaluating the achievements of council goals and providing direction for the development of the city budget. So my presentation addresses the strategic planning process, which you are very well aware of, the work plan, the 2021 and 22 strategic plan that you're looking at adopting today, plus a review of the 3-star items that were forwarded that are continued in your strategic plan. We have a number of 2 and 1 stars also, but I thought due to time and importance, so we would just highlight the 3 stars that are still in your strategic plan. From a process standpoint, council is very strategic on how they go about receiving information and gathering information. You first start by having community forums, asking for public input, getting an idea of what we're doing well, what people would like to see us do more of, what we're not addressing, what they would like us to address. You ask your advisory committees well in advance of the strategic planning process. What are your hopes and dreams? What are your goals? And they bring forward their goals to you. And those are 11 plus advisory committees that you have that address a number of different community interests. We also have staff bring forward their goals and objectives for the year and what we think are as important from an organization that needs to be accomplished. And then you yourself all sit down with your own time and work out what your goals are and what you hear from your constituents and what you think is important to bring forward to the strategic planning process. We then sit down and review all of those things, define them, and have a clear understanding of where the community wants to go and how we might achieve those goals. You then prioritize those goals, and we discuss them, and ultimately have what's in front of you today as a prioritized strategic plan. The beautiful thing about that is you have a great idea of where you want to go and how we're going to get there, because then we develop a work plan that's associated with your strategic plan. And then from there, you appropriate resources to your work plan. We monitor successes on a quarterly basis, and we rework this process and rejuvenate the strategic plan on an annual basis. Besides the process of developing your strategic plan, another item that's extremely important is the work plan. It provides the real fuel, the coal that burns that fire that gets us to where we need to go. And the work plan is successful because we use SMART goals. They're specific, they're measurable, we know what it takes to achieve them, we know what type of resources and when we're going to accomplish those. And staff puts departments, they put names, we put responsibilities down on those work plans so we know who's responsible and when they're going to get done. And that really helps us achieve those goals also. Out of strategic planning, we have 5 primary goals. The first is ensure community safety, provide cooperative shared leadership involving council, staff, and the community, encourage economic opportunities, facilitate sustainable, manageable growth, maintain, operate, and expand our infrastructure to meet community needs. Those 5 goals are supported by 23 different objectives, which are then even further supported by 104 different actions, making it a living document. So throughout the year, there may be things that pop up, and we can bend with the wind and include those items. Out of your strategic plan this year, you have a top 5. Your top 5 is 1, to explore the urban renewal agency opportunities for K-Van Plaza, implement a housing action plan, public facilities management plan, trail development and recreation, create city climate task force or committee. Now within some of those, there were some specific objectives and tasks associated with some of those goals that I wanted to highlight. For instance, under encourage an environment which provides for growth and affordable housing opportunities, which is a 3-star item, there are a number of different actions that also came out of strategic planning that are going to be in your strategic plan, not as objectives but as actions, and they are: rezone the urban growth boundary areas from rural to urban before the transportation system plan is updated, support a community development foundation, define development incentives and explore funding sources and partnerships, establish a land bank program. Further on the housing needs is encourage a strong partnership between Josephine Housing Authority and Jackson County Housing Authority. Lobby the state to allow relaxed building codes for retrofitting upstairs spaces in the downtown buildings for residential use. Aggressively gear up for the implementation of House Bill 2001 with an ordinance allowing cottages and clusters. Develop and implement an asset management plan. Now, under Implement Housing Action Plan, which is a 3-star item also, and part of this, is develop a market affordable housing programs, conduct a housing needs analysis, create a pilot housing project program, support opportunities to obtain and sustain affordable home ownership, develop 2 or more pre-approved ADU plans at 750 square feet and 500 square feet, create pre-designed floor plans for triplexes, fourplexes, and duplexes, prioritize review of building permits for affordable housing. Permit manufactured homes outright. Allow small and tiny homes with standards. Use the Urban Renewal Agency to incentivize development of multifamily housing by WinCo. Promote accessory dwelling unit infill. And develop minimum density zones. Further, incentivize increase the city's affordable housing inventory by 2030 through expediting permits, financial motivation, and development code amendments. Promote mixed-use zoning and policies which foster additional housing types, and facilitate development of low-income housing. All of these items will be forwarded to your Housing Advisory Committee for them to chew on a little bit, and then prioritize back to you as ultimately an implementation of the Housing Action Plan. Because housing was one of your top 5 topics, I thought it was important for us to also highlight those items that I did just this evening. Out of strategic planning, you also had a number of 2-star items, which included pass a public safety levy, develop an urban interface wildfire resilience plan, caveman pool to task force development, create an equity task force or committee, facilitate the development of homeless shelter and urban campground, pedestrian bicycle commuting connectivity, parklet infrastructure plan, support continuity of community events, and work with the county to move the bus hub. Out of this year's strategic planning, you also had a number of 1-star items that are going to be entered into the plan, which means at least 4 council members thought it was important for us to discuss further at a council level. And those include explore economic impacts of cannabis industry, identify new methods to increase communication and participation with citizens, and when possible, hold a State of the City public forum or partner with school organizations to do more public outreach throughout the city. Publish a total of 4 art spotlights. Support establishment of Downtown Merchant Association. Create a walking art map. Upgrade or relocate the skate park. Dedicate tree canopy funding. Permit funding for public safety services. Continued as one of your 1 stars is increase public awareness for decisions regarding water treatment plant. Fire rescue division internal restructure. Add 1 parking lot art installation to a designated parking lot. Fire feasibility study for demand generators. Feasibility study for demand generators, sorry. Reassess the purpose and usage of Gilbert Creek Park and redesign it to better meet the neighborhood needs. And review water rate structures. Those are all the new items which will be included in the plan that is in front of you today for your adoption. Wanted to also highlight, just as you know, some continuation of the 3 stars that have been put in for years past. And that includes building new water treatment plant in 2014. Continued in 14 is to prepare a funding package to resolve the sewer development issues in Spalding Park. Develop Beacon Hill Park. Ornamental lights on H and 5th Street. And as you know, some of these things are probably very familiar with you because we are making progress on a number of these items. Develop landscape amendments focused on xeriscaping. Develop a parking restroom management plan. Develop a forest stewardship and recreational use plan for Dollar Mountain. Alley activation and beautification. Develop housing incentives for multifamily units. Restore and replace Caveman Pool and install additional security cameras throughout the park system. And finally on the list is prevention-focused community policing to help reduce crime and to build public trust, identify park infrastructure priorities, and install sidewalks and crosswalks near the intersection of Foundry and Booth Streets. And as you can see, a number of those items have been on there since 2014 all the way up to 2020, so some of the goals that we have, the beautiful thing about strategic planning is we continue to work on them until they're achieved or something else comes along, and some of these are multi-year projects. The cost implication, well, that's associated with the strategic plan and we'll review through the budget process and how the monies are allocated. The call to action is to adopt the strategic plan. You can modify per council direction or take no action. And the call to action date is today, and it's at your council discretion. I turn it over to you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you. Sorry. Do we have questions for Aaron? No? Thank you, Aaron. Do we have members of the public here to speak on the strategic plan? No? Yes?
I'm not really here to speak on the plan, but I want to point out that, to my knowledge, the parklets were put as a 2-star priority, and I would love to see it as a 3-star priority before so many more of our businesses go out of business.
Thank you. Parklets.
Jill, which one did you say?
Parklets.
It's not on this because it's not a 3-star.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll open it up for council discussion. And Brian?
I move to adopt the city's strategic plan as proposed.
Move to adopt. Valerie, second. Do we have comment? All right, seeing no comment, we'll go ahead and vote. Brian?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rob? All right, strategic plan is adopted. We have a number of public here to speak tonight, so I am going to move public comment to be next on our agenda. We'll hold off on the Housing Advisory Committee for a few minutes here. Regarding public comment, give a little address here. So this is an opportunity for the public to address the City Council on items not related to a public hearing or council action item. The intent is to provide information that is pertinent to the city's jurisdiction. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to address the council as one body, not to individuals. Council may consider items brought up during this time later in our agenda during matters from mayor, council, and staff. This meeting will proceed in an effective and courteous manner. Citizens and council members will be allowed to state their positions in an atmosphere free from slander, threats, or other personal attacks. Signs or placards, outbursts of applause, campaigning for public office, or other disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. If you have a question regarding any government-provided service or a current city policy, please contact the city manager's office in an attempt to resolve the matter. And I'll remind everybody in the room too, please to keep your masks on and covering both your mouth and your nose unless you're eating or drinking something. With that said, I'm going to call forward members of the public. And you have 30 seconds after that yellow light goes off. Eric Solomon. Thanks for your patience tonight, everybody.
No problem. My name is Eric Solomon, owner of the Horny Goat here down the Central Business District. And I just wanted to bring up to the council the great need down here in the Central Business District, being a food and beverage centric area. We've taken an extreme hit in the COVID, and it's really stressing the area. And we would really like to see these parklets come back to increase our outdoor seating so we can remain viable, but taking too much more time, we don't have time. That's one of the luxuries we don't have. So if we could have a plan or some guidance, how we can start this, we can take action ourselves. We have the model that the city has already shown us as to what, where, and what we should do. But we need to take action on that pretty quickly. There's a lot of businesses are really in stress right now. And the sooner we can serve more, seat more, it'll help us survive this. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Jill?
Basically the same thing. I'm Jill Deeney, owner of the Bohemian Bar and Bistro, a family-friendly, casual community dining establishment. We've been here almost 9 years. This year has made it very difficult to stay in business, and the parklets were the most wonderful saving grace that we experienced in 2020, and we need them back. And we need them sooner than later, just as Eric said. So we're hoping that you can get that on the agenda and move it forward. We're willing to go talk to the Osland Group ourselves and say, look, we're ready. Let's just do it. And we know that the look of the parklets, a lot of people thought they weren't attractive enough. We will do the work. We will paint them. We put plants out. We do all sorts of things. We want our downtown to look wonderful for our locals and our tourists. So hoping to get this back soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate Bortels?
Hi, I work at the Welcome Center, and I just have some words to express to you over concerns. The Welcome Center is a critical part of the city of Grants Pass. It hallmarks a historic district and helps tourists, future residents, and local residents explore the beauty of the Rogue Valley. Working at the Welcome Center, we meet so many interesting people from all around the world and send them to businesses and places they never thought of exploring. We would embellish their plans with thoughts and recommendations from our own personal experiences, and the visitors end up staying longer and leaving very thankful and very happy. Closing the Welcome Center would be a great loss to the city of Grants Pass. Our city's future is dependent on tourism and new residents that we service. Cities nearby Grants Pass that I visit often recognize the importance of visitor centers to their well-being. Mount Shasta, with less than 1/10 of the population of Grants Pass, has a visitor center. Crescent City, with less than 1/5 of the population of Grants Pass, has 2 visitor centers. And these visitor centers run profitable retail operations. The Grants Pass Welcome Center could also be profitable to the city of Grants Pass by supplying tourists with Grants Pass merchandise. Not a day goes by at the Welcome Center without someone expressing disappointment that we do not have Grants Pass clothing, postcards, decals, and other such memorabilia. Our tourists want a reminder of their amazing experience here. Therefore, providing merchandise is a win-win opportunity. It can easily make the Welcome Center pay for itself while boosting tourism. We want our Travel Grants Pass Welcome Center to be the nerve center of the historic district. We want it to be the place where all questions are answered and our treasured tourists can leave with a token of the fabulous time they had in Southern Oregon. By providing tourists with Grants Pass items, I know that they will be better remember their experiences here and have a reminder to return sooner. At the Welcome Center, we team with our local retailers and should make such retail items available at a discount to them as well. It has also been a great service of the Welcome Center to supply merchants with COVID-19 sanitation supplies. This is just an example of the flexibility of the Welcome Center. Please keep our wonderful Welcome Center open for all those who depend upon it and for the good future of Grants Pass. And thank you.
Thank you. Paulette Shepard?
Thank you for the opportunity. I was born and raised here. I'm a retired psychiatric nurse of 35 years experience, and I also have a 35-year-old autistic son. And I'm saying that's important because I've been servicing and providing items for the homeless displaced community since mid-August, and I want to talk about the treatment that these people are getting by law enforcement, specifically one officer. Several months ago, when I mentioned after I'd started experiencing what this officer was doing to these people down there, I mentioned it to one of the now council members, but he wasn't on the council at that point. And he was very understanding, and he said, you need to understand that these officers are following orders. I said, well, can't they just follow with a little more dignity or compassion or some empathy? So one of the things I want to ask you is, I don't know what orders these are. Can the orders stop about when they need to take their tents down? And the treatment that this officer is giving these people is harassing, it's demeaning, it's abusive, it's bullying, it's insulting, it's threatening. He kicks their tents, he breaks their poles. Probably 80% of the people down there are mentally handicapped. There are autistic people down there. There are people dealing with PTSD. And when you go and shake the poles the first thing in the morning at 7 o'clock, well, it sets off PTSD. I can't even tell you what it does to the autistic community down there. I have come in probably 4 to 5 days a week. I'm down there providing food, clothing, tents, tarps, you name it, dental supplies. I am with those people 2 to 3 hours, 4 days a week. I know these people, they trust me, and I trust the experiences that they're sharing with me regarding this officer, which is horrific. He's called the ladies cunts. He's called the men trolls. They can't sleep under the bridges anymore. They're harassed if they speak up to him. They're threatened with detainment. I went there once, 15 minutes after he left, and they were under the old pavilion, the one that was redone because of the tree fell on it. And they were told that the pavilion was closed. 20 minutes later, there was a family in there having lunch. So it was closed to the homeless people. Oh, God. They're now kicked out from underneath the bridges. There's no place for these people to go when it's 29 degrees out there. I am very concerned. I'm appalled by the behavior of this officer and it's Officer Ardoff. And I speak that, and I'm concerned for retribution for myself. I'm just going to say that. So thank you for listening. I hope that something changes for this community.
Thank you. Eva Steinbeck?
I'm Eva Steinbach, and I witnessed it too.
Can you please speak into the mic? Thank you.
I'm Eva Steinbach, and I chose to go down there the last few days. I camped down there because I wanted to see what was going on. Ardoff woke me up knowing I have a service rooster because I am mentally unstable. I have a real life therapy rooster. He knows I have it. He does not need to shake my tent. He's scaring the animals. I have a rooster. Several people have dogs. They know that some of the people are autistic. RDOF does not need to shake a tent knowing people have post-traumatic stress disorder and animals in a tent. Seriously trying to yank and grab them. My whole family's been here since 1962, and I chose to see what was going on. And it's not okay. And whoever's telling them to do it really does need to stop. Because now there's handicapped people, an elderly lady out there is supposed to freeze tonight. RDOF went and messed up everything. Like, now what are they supposed to do? And yes, I can go home, but I'm not going to because I want to witness it. I've been taking pictures and photos of it. It's got to stop. It's human neglect, and they're being bullies toward the homeless and the handicapped people. It's really got to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Collier?
Mark Collier, Grants Pass. Everything that Paulette has said is true. She goes down there at 11, I go down there at 7:30. I go down there almost as many days as she does. Tonight, 3 millimeters will separate Michelle from freezing. It's going below freezing tonight, it's going to be 30 degrees. Why 3 millimeters of plastic? Because her tent has been ripped over her head while she was in it. Same thing happened with Tyson. 5 tents he's lost. Why 5? I've replaced 2. Every time the police go down there and abuse these people, I will go down there again. I'm sick of it. The abuse that they're taking is unnecessary. Nothing in the case that you lost, the case that you inherited and lost, Blake versus City of Grants Pass, where the judge just ripped you a new one, it's bad. Martin and Boise was bad enough, but Blake made it worse for Grants Pass. Therefore, this court finds that it is not enough under the 8th Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment, to simply allow sleeping in public spaces. 8th Amendment also prohibits the city from punishing homeless people for taking the necessary minimal measures to keep themselves warm and dry while sleeping while there are no alternative forms of shelter available. Minimal attempts. For Christ's sake, what are we doing? This is disgusting. Ripping off their tents. RDOF is breaking their tent poles when he takes their tents apart. Breaking them, the poles. They're sleeping in 3-season tents. Do you know why they're not in 4-season tents? Because nobody camps in the 4th season. Do you know where we're at? The 4th season, winter. They camp spring, fall, summer, whatever it is. Nobody camps in the winter. You don't get a 4-season tent. That's why when they take them down, when they order them, and I heard them this morning, break down your tent. They break down the tent. It breaks. It's fiberglass pole. It's supposed to be light. I can't contain myself. I followed the guy around, McGinnis, this morning. He's supposed to be the nice guy. I go, you got to be kidding me. You're going to do this to this guy in a tent? I got pictures of this. This is going to look so bad on social media. It's so ironic that you want $6.1, $6.3, $6.5 million for the next 3 years with a levy that you hope to pass. When we're doing this, it's not going to work. I campaigned for many of you. And in the same enthusiasm that I brought you here, of course, same enthusiasm I brought you here will be the same one that I used to prohibit the levy. Flush that thing. I haven't lost a campaign, you know that. Bonds, $84 million, gold-plated North and South Middle School, easy to defeat. You want a levy, you want $6 million a year and treat them like that? We've talked about this, I can't believe it. You need to go down there. If someone will go down there with me, I will show you. You need to listen to them and her.
Thank you. Steve Nelson?
Thank you for allowing me to speak. This letter is regarding council business of 2020, but I never read my letter at that time. I can only define the River Road Reserve land sale as one huge land grab motivated by greed. The motion by the council was rushed even though there was outspoken public opposition, and the public hearing was a farce. I was not entirely opposed to selling the land, but the sale should have rightly been only to those motivated by land stewardship. The city and Travis Boersma are like closely knit business partners, and the horse racing / gambling enterprise being developed by Mr. Boersma is actually a crafty way for him to get onto the agriculture land, another one of his millionaire pursuits. But to say that a greed-driven horse racing / gambling industry will offer good stewardship of the land is, I believe, ridiculous. Acreage, which also is important for wildlife habitat. I find quite intriguing the Iroquois Nation belief to respect and protect the people and the land by looking ahead to the 7th generation. And yet, the belief also makes me sad, as the land grab attitude is so prevalent in our time. Mark my words, if the horse racing / gambling industry fails here as it did in the Portland area, then possibly the farmland will be subdivided across. And the annexation of the land can be expedited. At this time, I can only ask that Travis Boersma will truly listen to the public and thereby be a good steward of the land, not following only his pursuits. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the last card I had for public comment this evening.
You asked her, she got called earlier. It was a mistake, she got wrapped in the earlier comment.
Okay, please state your name again.
My name is Michelle Parsons.
Go ahead.
Due to a bad relationship, I lost everything that I had saved to be able to have a house for my son after he graduated high school, to always be able to find his mom. And I wound up on the streets, and I didn't realize that living here in the community in the Illinois Valley for 30 years, I did not realize how rough it is out on the streets. And since I've been here, I've gotten 2 fines for not breaking down my tent, and both times it was still at freezing after 7:30 in the morning. There's nowhere for us to go. I slipped through the cracks. I don't have any drug or alcohol problems. I don't have any diagnosed mental issues. PTSD is starting to get at me though. And it's just not fair. I had my tarp ripped off of the top of me with Ardoff and the McGinnis was snorting and blowing, and who wants to go to jail today? And that's not a very nice way to wake up. I was already awake. I was just sheltered still. And it's sad that the city doesn't have anything for the home shelter for people who slip through the cracks. You know, I don't even have anywhere to stash. I don't know if I'm coming back to a sleeping bag in a tent or not when I hide it out in the bushes, whether it's going to get stolen from the cops or by somebody else. And the public's not any better either. They have some kind of a problem with the homeless, and I understand they are not very well house trained. But there's other resolutions to that. And I want to get back in the workforce. I don't want to be like this. I don't want to show my son that I'm weak like this. I always taught him to be strong, and there's just nowhere to start. And I think there should be a shelter, and I think that on really cold days, it's not functional for a homeless person anyways. We don't hop out of a warm house into a warm car to go to warm work. When we get up and it's freezing out, we stay frozen, and there's no way to function like that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the council will have an opportunity to review the public comment a bit later in the meeting if you are interested in sticking around, but at this time we'll return back to our appointing one member to the Housing Advisory Committee. And we have 4 applicants for the position: Tom Bradbeer, John Kliegel, Brian Mulkins and Margaretta Stone. The committee has recommended John Kliegel. Counselors, you should all have a yellow sheet at your table. If you could please indicate on it. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to make a comment before we did the vote on this, so whenever I can do
Okay.
that, that'd be great.
Yep. Aaron?
I just want to make a comment too. The form, it actually does not have included on it, which it should have, is notice of any current seating on an advisory committee, and Tom Bradbeer is, I believe, currently on the budget committee. And so that was something that previous councils wanted to know, if there were any members that were currently serving on a committee or commission.
Thank you. But none of these four are currently serving on the Housing Advisory Committee?
No, but you also, the previous councils wanted to know because, if they're serving on any other advisories also.
Sure. Okay, so you should all have your comments, your card, I think. Yes, Valerie?
I just had a question, because I know that one of the people who actually applied does not live, they said in their application they did not live in Grants Pass. And is that not one of the requirements? I mean, because maybe I'm wrong, it says I now live in Medford. And so
The majority, unless it's a commission, the majority of your advisory committees don't necessarily have a designated residency requirement. So that is a little open.
Okay, it was something I wasn't aware of. So when I came across that, it was surprising that they can live outside of the area. Okay.
I'd have to take a look at the formation of the Housing Advisory Committee and see if they have residency requirements, but some of your advisory committees actually don't have residency requirements.
All right, well, I was going to say that we each have the yellow sheet in front of us. And so the process was going to be that you all will highlight the person that you're interested in recommending and sign it. And now I will open it up for questions. Brian?
Thank you, Sarah. So in reviewing this appointment and these applications, I was interested in seeing that we had actually 4 really good applicants. I thought they all had strong points. I wanted to know a little bit more about the rationale behind why Housing Committee chose their particular recommendation, because I wanted a little bit more context. So what I did is I reached out to Doug Walker because I just wanted to understand a little bit more. And what he told me is that the process that they undertook to come to this recommendation is they sent out an email to the committee with the applications, and then they asked the committee members to reply with their recommendation. So I have a little bit of concern that there actually wasn't any sort of discussion or deliberation amongst the committee about these candidates. It was all done via email with no discussion. And the other part was that from what Doug said, only 5 of the 10 members in his recollection actually responded with a recommendation, and it was not unanimous. So less than a majority of the actual committee recommended this member. So I just say that to everybody to know, so that you know kind of a little bit more behind, because we don't really have a lot of information on this sheet. And so the point I'm making is I don't know if I'm totally comfortable recommending that particular candidate without knowing more about the committee's decision process. And I do very much respect the committees. I come from Parks Committee, and I still have questions.
Thank you. Rick?
So DJ, you're the liaison for Housing Advisory. I'd like to hear your input on the choice, if you have any input.
Sure. Brian, you're correct about how this went and the email and the preference, and half of the committee responded. There was no formal discussion inside of the committee, which I also noticed. My preference is different from the committee's preference. as well. And I think there's some work to be done about committee recommendations and how that's structured. So essentially what Brian has just said is entirely correct.
And are you willing to disclose your preference, or do you want to wait till later?
Yeah, I'm very happy to do so. I am in favor of Tom Bradbeer. The guy is just a rock star, to say the least, and any bit of involvement that he could do to utilize his expertise is appreciated. And he fills the criteria. He sent a special email demonstrating his willingness and you know, how he meets the criteria and what he can bring to the Housing Advisory Committee.
Rob, and then Vanessa, and then Valerie.
So, DJ O'Brien, did the committee actually interview all the candidates? Okay, that's really disturbing to me, because I know for a long time the committees and commissions wanted to be, they wanted their input respected when it came to making recommendations, because very often they know what that committee or commission's special qualifications require. I know on the HBSC that we actually interview anyone that we've considered. We discussed it somewhat, but we absolutely interview, and everybody has a question to, I mean, everyone has an opportunity, every member of the commission has the opportunity to ask questions. So it's not a responsibility that that particular commission has taken lightly, and it's disturbing to me that they didn't take that opportunity to really do a good job. It's a great committee, but not as far as this part of it. So I would hope that, yeah, we can get that squared away so that all the committees and commissions are doing a little bit more consistent delving into the people, interviewing them, and being able to back up their decisions a little bit more thoroughly.
Vanessa, then Valerie.
I don't even know if this is the right place to make the statement, but I observed this also during last month's appointment to the Parks Advisory Committee, that I would, moving forward from the committees, I would like to have some sort of fact sheet that just really briefly says why they support the individual that they're recommending. And I would like to see this here as well.
Valerie?
Yeah, I would agree, because, you know, I want to be in support of what they want, but I want to understand what they want. And then particularly when I was looking at this one, this is a housing advisory committee, and it needs to be somebody who owns rental property. And it was interesting to me that the one person that they recommended says nothing. He says he checked the box that he owned rental property, but he says nothing anywhere in his application giving any indication of renting property and what he would bring to the table from a person who is actually renting property, because that to me is a specific place on that committee that needs a spot. So that's why I tended to want to go back to one of the other people who showed that they owned rental property, and that was, therefore they would represent that point of view from a housing advisory committee, because I do think it's important. So I am as well disappointed that there was simply a name put there, because to me, I didn't see, you know, the importance of having somebody who is a property owner being represented. And he checked a box that he was a property owner. And then when I saw the other person wasn't even from our area, but is very knowledgeable about our area. Obviously, Ryan Wilkins was a DA, and so he would bring a lot to the table, and he owns property. So anyway, I am disappointed, so I kind of feel the same way. I don't know if I feel comfortable voting.
I have a question about just, did the Housing Advisory Committee meet in between the time that the applications were due? Like, how did that process? Maybe you know, DJ, why did they end up doing it via email?
Yeah, there was no formal discussion about the candidates in a housing advisory meeting.
Was there
that
an
I'm aware of.
opportunity to, like, did they have a meeting since the time that the applications were due?
There was an occasion using, the last meeting, for example, on the action item, it was to basically discuss the applicants And all that came out of that meeting was a very brief statement about committee recommends John Kliegel. Does everybody support that? Yep, and it moved on.
Okay.
It was very brief.
So they technically did discuss it at a meeting, it just was very brief,
More or less, yes.
lacking in discussion.
It was
But
lacking,
it was
yeah.
presented and agreed upon at the meeting. Okay, so we didn't have some sort of failure in process where we skipped a step and they had to scramble to do it by email or anything like that. They had their opportunity. They didn't provide an explanation. That could be something maybe we want to do going forward. I mean, at this time, do you guys want to go forward with the yellow slips? Do you want to just make a motion? DJ, then Brian?
Yeah, Sarah, so that being said, you're correct. There was notice, there was applicants, there was, they made a motion to support John Kliegel. So in that regards, yeah, I would say I'm comfortable with following through with the appointment. I am also comfortable with showing my favor to somebody who, another applicant that was not their recommendation.
Absolutely. I think that's just a bit of information there for you, for what it's worth. Brian?
I feel like I don't have enough information to actually vote on this. So my suggestion would be to, in respect of the committee, would be to kick this back to them and ask them to provide us with somewhat of a rationale or some sort of information as to why this is the best person for this position. And without that, I'll probably just have to abstain tonight.
Okay, are you making a motion to not do this tonight?
I move that we put off this appointment and request a written rationale from Housing Committee on why they are recommending this candidate.
Okay, is there a second? Rob with the second? All right, discussion on the motion? Rob?
It's similar to the appointment we made to the Parks Committee, and at that point, we kind of trusted Brian's judgment because I guess he had been at the meeting or he knew the person. This particular time, DJ also is vouching for actually a different candidate than who they recommended. But what's problematic for me is the fact that only half of their members responded apparently, and that to me kind of invalidates the process for me, and I'd like to give them a chance to go back and do it better. I respect DJ's opinion as much as I respect on this issue, as much as I respected Brian's opinion on the Parks Committee, but just the fact that only 50% participated, I can't get past that, so that's why I would vote to put this off until we get more information.
DJ?
Yeah, that being said, we have the information, we have the applications, we have all the things that the Housing Advisory has absorbed and read. We are the board that appoints the experts that we see fit to whatever committees. Could it use some work to address kind of appointments and how we would like to see that happen in the future? Sure. But I'm going to vote no on the motion.
And the committee did technically vote on it at their meeting. Okay, further comment on the motion? All right, we're going to vote on whether to kick this back to the committee for further explanation of their recommendation. Brian?
Yes.
Valerie?
No.
Rick?
No.
DJ?
No.
Joel?
No.
Vanessa?
No.
Rob?
No.
All right, motion fails. Next up, shall we move forward with the yellow sheets? All right. Please mark your yellow sheets. Pass those down to me. I'm going to read the name of a candidate or candidates if there's a strong preference, and then we will take a formal vote. All right, we have 6 candidates have indicated Tom Bradbeer. So I'll call for nominations. DJ?
I'd like to move to appoint Tom Bradbeer to the Housing Advisory Committee.
Valerie with the second. Is there discussion? Joel?
Yeah, I've worked with Tom quite a bit, and based on personal knowledge, he's more than qualified, otherwise I wouldn't vote for him. With all due respect to the committee, you know, I respect their authority to recommend to us, and the information I got from them didn't make me change my mind on my personal knowledge that I had of the applicants and the applications themselves. And it doesn't mean that they're wrong and I'm right, it's just my opinion, and I'm exercising my authority.
Valerie?
Yes, I'm just going to go along with that because I have also worked with Tom Bradbeer, and he brings a lot to the table, and I was very impressed with his amount of knowledge and what he knows about renting and the amount of rental properties he's had and what he's dealt with. And that's what I was looking for, was as a person who's an owner of rentals, that was what I was looking for, is what that piece brought to the table.
Rick?
I agree with the comments that have been said, and I really appreciate Tom on different committees before and knowing him personally, and he really is the most qualified.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to appoint Tom Bradbeer to the Housing Advisory Committee. Ready to vote? Brian?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rob? Yes. Thank you. We'll move forward with that appointment. All right. Now, we're going to jump back to reviewing emails. Sorry, we have a quirky agenda tonight. Were you ready for us, Julie?
Okay. So you had 1 email regarding the homeless and public safety department, 15 emails regarding the Dollar Mountain project, 1 email regarding community service officers and budget cuts, 1 email about the town center plaza, 1 email about the council manager form of government, and 2 emails about the Josephine County Board of Commissioners.
Thank you. All right, Valerie?
I did have a question, and I know this is something that Rob had brought up before as well, with emails coming forth. And I do know one of those emails asked to be read during public comment specifically, and I got a call from Mark Seligman asking the same thing, the one on the homeless be read. And I'm sure probably many of you heard the same from Mark Seligman. And I would just like to say, I know Mark Seligman lives out in Selma, so that brought up to me the discussion that we had about when people write emails. It would really be nice if we knew who they were and where they lived, if they were just no different than when people come up here to give public sentiment, you know, if we could somehow get and ask them to put their names and where they live, just because I feel more responsible if it's a city resident to respond than I do, like in the case of Mark, who I know who lives out in the county. And I think the message he got across, we heard from city residents, and so I don't feel compelled to necessarily have his email read out loud. But if it were a city resident who really felt that they couldn't come in because of COVID or whatever and wanted it read, that's something to think about. So I'm just going to put that out there.
Rob?
Yeah, thank you, Valerie. I agree with everything you said. Beyond that, I think that the council, in the council chambers, I think we've gotten a little bit lazy in the last few years, because when people were at the podium, they always used to have to give their address as well. We never do that anymore, or seldom. So when somebody has an issue and they live in the neighborhood that they're talking about, that takes top priority for me. If they live in Grants Pass, that's a really high priority. If they live in Josephine County, it's a priority more than Southern Oregon or more than Des Moines, Iowa would be. So I think that and I know that on the city website, when it talks about, when you look under mayor council and communicating with mayor council, it specifically does say to provide your address. when you're communicating with the council. So I would like to add, we have now, which is kind of cool, the immediate response from the mayor that acknowledges emails as they come in. You know, we added that a couple weeks ago. I think it just came online this week. But I would like to add in that response that if you include your address, your email will be given greater priority or more consideration or something like that. Because when we get, like we had last time, 240 names or 240 letters from people that we had no idea where they lived, you know, to me that becomes background noise. I have no idea who they are or why I should be concerned with what they think. If they were to tell me where they lived, I could be very concerned. So I think we can add that to the response to the email, that the address should be included. And I think that we need to also ask that, because it used to, you know, years ago, whoever the mayor was used to say, you know, name and address, please. And it was helpful, you know, and I think we should just go back to that as well.
I was told that that wasn't a council requirement anymore. I don't know whether that's correct or not, but maybe if we should have this whole discussion in the review public comment section.
Well, I just brought that up because I knew that that particular email, he had specifically asked to have it read, so I didn't know, that's why I brought it up.
Aaron?
So 2 comments. One, I'd be cautious about the request of someone reading into public record. I had a conversation with the same gentleman, and you might want to maintain or figure out once you start it what your current and past practice might be, and go from there. The issue with addresses, I can totally appreciate where Councilor Pell and Councilor Lovelace was talking about, and trying to judge and weight the comments that are coming to you, and residency, I think, has obviously weight to it. We could potentially change the mayor-council way of submitting something to you. We could potentially have a form fillable page on your page of mayor-council, just like you do on, you know, you submit your credit card information type of thing, but you have to submit your name, you have to submit a valid address, and then it provides you an opportunity to do your comment to push send. And so if you didn't do your name and address and you tried to do the comment to send, it won't send. You have to put your name and address, which would be a given, and then you can provide your comment to council. It would do away with the mayor-council email just as a general thing. They could still, the way they would get that portal to you to do mayor-council email was they'd have to put in their name, their address, and then the comment that they want to provide to you, and then they could send submit. And that's something we could look at doing if you're strongly looking at wanting to have an idea of where your comments are coming from.
Thoughts? Ready to move on? Vanessa?
Is this the time to
I guess we
review
may as
public
well
comment?
continue this discussion at this time. Maybe we'll just not talk about people's specific comments until later on. But
Okay.
if you're talking about the issue of how to address us.
Yeah, I take issue with requiring anyone to disclose their address to this council before making a statement. Specifically, folks who live out in the county, I don't like it when we draw these imaginary borders of whose opinion matters and who doesn't, because I have people near and dear to my life that live out in the county, but they own and operate small businesses in the community. They grocery shop in the community. They recreate in this city. Grants Pass is the hub of the county, so I value everyone's opinion within our county's borders.
Rick?
Another idea would be for them to indicate what section of the city they live in if we're sensitive about private information, but that might be another alternative.
Brian?
I appreciate this discussion, and I think that we probably should do something at some point. I don't know that we're going to figure it out right now.
Rob?
Yeah, I would agree, Brian. And also, I know that in the past, people have sometimes gone to the podium and said, you know, I live here, but I do own a business downtown, or I own property downtown, or I have 10 properties within Grants Pass. But if they're just going to talk to me and not give me any real reason as to why I should respect them any more than I should respect someone who lives in Pakistan, I mean, I need a reason, quite frankly, and that's just maybe who I am, but that's me.
All right, good food for thought. We can address this again in the future if we want to change our practices of how we ask for people's addresses when they come to speak to us during public comment, or if we want to change that email address to some sort of form or some other practice. Consent agenda. Are you ready, DJ?
Yes, I'm ready. Let's see. Item A, resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a 3-year labor contract with the International Association of Firefighters, Local 3564. Item B, motion acknowledging the System Development Charges Annual Report for fiscal 2020. Item C, motion approving the minutes of the City Council meeting of January 20, 2021. Item D, motion approving the minutes of the City Council special meeting of January 25, 2021. Item E, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Bikeways and Walkways Committee meeting of December 8, 2020. Item F, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Urban Area Planning Commission meeting of December 9, 2020. Item G, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Urban Tree Advisory Committee meeting of December 14, 2020. Item H, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Parks Advisory Committee meeting of November 12, 2020. And with that, I make a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Seconded by Rick. All right, let's vote. We'll start with Rob's end. Sorry, I don't have a standard practice for which end to start with. I should get better about this, but Rob?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
All right, consent agenda is consented to. And now, matters for mayor, council, and staff. And we'll first discuss a review of public comment. We had a number of speakers here with us tonight. Does anyone have something to say about that? Valerie and then Brian?
I would just like to respond to the parklets idea that I really, my heart bleeds for our local businesses, and I think that's something we need to get on an agenda to really take a look at, seeing what we can do. I know that at one point, you had talked about the alleyways and that you were pursuing some of that, and so I just think I would like to have it brought forth to us the sooner the better, to make something happen for those downtown businesses.
Brian?
I second what Valerie has said. I think the Parklet program is very successful. I think it's honestly probably vital at this point for those downtown restaurants. And I know that there's some issues with stormwater and other winter items. I don't know that those are things that we can't overcome, but I don't know that we've looked to overcome them yet. So I think that it would be a good idea to see if those can be overcome in a timely manner, just specifically for the parklets. And then also speaking to everyone who spoke about the homeless issue this evening, that was some pretty compelling testimony and pretty disturbing testimony too. I have some concerns about what I heard tonight, and I would agree with a lot of it. I think that we need to have a bigger discussion about how our citizens, our most vulnerable citizens, are getting treated. And I know that we have talked about this before and we've addressed it a little bit. However, it doesn't look like it's addressed to the satisfaction of our most vulnerable citizens. So I would like to discuss that again.
Joel?
So I'd like to respond to that as well. What I heard today was incongruent with what I've observed. The police department, to my knowledge, they're willing to take people that don't want to sleep in a cold, wet area to vacant beds even as far away as Klamath Falls. And they'll personally use, and they won't personally use, they'll use a public police car funded by Grants Pass to take them over there. Now, the other thing I've observed is how they interact with the people personally down at the park, and I haven't seen what I heard tonight. That doesn't mean that it didn't occur. And I'll tell you that I will be down there. And, but it's incongruent with what I know. The other thing is it's not anybody's goal to have people sleep in a tent in a park. That is not a permanent solution for anybody, and especially a public park where it not only affects them adversely, but it affects other people as well. And it ceases to become a public park. So for their own benefit and for the benefit of the citizens, I think we need to, and we are, finding some better solutions for people. And hopefully they can get back onto the American dream, or whatever you want to call it, and go from there. But so I'll personally be down there, and it's incongruent with what I've personally observed.
Aaron.
Yeah, on this issue, the chief and I have talked about this, and he can add to this if he'd like, but we would encourage council members at any time to do a walk along with those officers down in that area. And we would schedule that starting tomorrow if you so desired. And so you can provide an opportunity to have firsthand observation of how we operate down there. Chief, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. I first want to just make sure the council knows that I applaud not only Mark Collier, but any citizen that comes forward and is willing to make a comment about the behavior of any of the men and women at the Grants Pass Department of Public Safety. And I can assure you that we have a robust investigative process in place, and we will look into this. And I can also assure you that Mark and I have communicated about this topic yesterday, and the ball is already rolling. I take all accusations serious until I can prove or disprove otherwise. And I would also just remind council and anybody listening that we all have a right to due process, and there are procedures in place. But I do take all accusations, complaints, even comments incredibly serious, because I have to be able to speak up for all of the men and women at the Grants Pass Department of Public Safety, and I'm also the one to hold them accountable, to include myself. So I just wanted to assure the public and the council of that also.
Thank you. Vanessa?
I also wanted to second what Councilor Lovelace had said about the Parklet program. That motion came from the Tourism Advisory Committee back in December, that they wanted some action on that. And I do appreciate the work you've done on that, Brad, as well, to move forward with the consideration for the alley. So I would like to see that come forward again as well for consideration of the council. In regards to the second half of the public comment that we received around issues of treatment to specific individuals who are unhoused, I did some quick research on the Department of Public Safety Code of Ethics, and there is a clause where, it says the weak against oppression or intimidation, paraphrasing, that they are safeguarding that. So if anyone feels that that any law enforcement officer in our community has gone against the Code of Ethics, there are formal proceedings that you can take. There is a website on the grantspassoregon.gov. There's a form center, public safety commendation or complaint form. As well as completing that online, I would recommend contacting the Department of Public Safety and going up the chain of command, asking to speak with a supervisor, and going through the process in that way.
It's a joke.
Warren?
They don't have access.
Chief, please, no comments from the back of the room.
What Councilor also just said too, I would just remind the community that you can walk in anytime, and you can also form a complaint online, and your voice will be heard.
Thank you. Council DJ?
Yeah, I have a comment to make about the woman that mentioned merchandising and the Welcome Center as a funding mechanism. I think that's a fantastic idea. I know that we had some merchandising for some of the stuff we did at the Josephine County Fair and the presents there, super cool shirts and mugs and keychains that we had. I think that's great. I mean, particularly in the time that we're talking about, budget cuts or something. I mean, that could be a mechanism of funding and helping support. That could actually even trigger more interest in merchandising to help fund Welcome Center and tourism in general. I think that's great. Just wanted to say that and kind of what it would take to start investigating that. I'm not certain, other than just showing general favor to that idea.
So we've talked about that when a number of years ago, and one of the things that, because that was a concept that I thought would be neat, just because of the experience that we had from the fairgrounds and everyone wanting one of our t-shirts with GP Jeopardy. They're very popular. And we've got great designs on them. We discussed how we could do that downtown, and it's something we can do, but one of the concerns is we did not want to compete against the private sector. So we were potentially looking at and starting to inquire upon other businesses that would want to carry that product, and that we can make it, sell it to them at cost or whatever, and then they could carry and sell the product, because we technically wouldn't want to be selling something on the private sector and competing against them. So that was the rub that we had with that concept, and then John moved on and we just didn't take it any further.
Sure, yeah, I think that's a valid concern. However, we could earmark revenues to support tourism or downtown or whatever, so that there's a benefit to merchants downtown or otherwise. But appreciate that concern. It's certainly a valid one, but I'd still like to entertain the avenue. So, like I said, I don't know how to.
Valerie?
Do we muster up council support to do that? This is just kind of a unfamiliar territory.
Yeah, and I actually was going to call that up too, because I do agree that it is kind of exciting thought to do something like that. And I do know and recognize that the, visitor center downtown is very important. And one of the things that they talked about in the pay report was that, a lot of places now are turning that whole idea of a visitor center into some kind of fun ideas where they have different things and different merchants and different times kind of come in and set up shop in there to kind of promote what they do too. So there's a lot of things I think that we can look forward to kind of opening our eyes and maybe doing something a little different.
Yes, staff would be more than happy to take that to the next level. If that continues through our public safety discussion process, we could make it better than what it is today.
All right. Committee motions, we have a
We have
motion.
one committee motion, and the motion comes from the Parks Advisory Committee. Motion recommending council to approve the pilot project for Dollar Mountain. And call to action would be the scheduled topic for workshop update.
Brian?
It's my understanding we have this on our February 16th agenda, so we will be addressing this at that time.
Thank you. Rob?
It's obvious to everyone now. The Tourism Committee yesterday did make a motion to reopen the parklets as soon as possible. There were people there who were very intent, like they were tonight, about wanting to do that. I explained to them also that there are other moving parts involved, and but that the council would respect their motion. Also, they were asked about whether or not it should be a 2 or 3% potential increase for the lodging tax, and they were almost, I think, unanimous that 2% was better for several reasons. 3% would have made us the highest in Southern Oregon, would have made us top 10 in the state. They seemed to feel that was too high. In addition to, if it went 2%, that could potentially leave 1% leverage for future use for either the county or tourism district or whatever. So they were pretty clear. They were very clear that 2% is what they favored. I know that Valerie wanted to get input from them, and that was their response. That's all the Tourism Committee had to say.
Did they make a motion?
They made a motion to reopen the parklets as soon as possible, and they agreed that the 2% was their suggestion for if we were going to raise the lodging tax, 2% from the city of Grants Pass is what they felt I think unanimously, the appropriate amount.
Okay, I was just wondering, we kind of slipped into council liaison reports there, but there was also that motion connection, so some gray territory. But I think now we are ready for liaison reports, unless anybody has further discussion on the Dollar Mountain pilot program. That's already on our agenda for a couple weeks out. Okay, do you have further reports? No? Okay, Joel, you have something?
Yes, I got three. First, the tree committee met, and they're going to have some nominations for heritage tree sites that's going to come before the council. And these are trees of historical, botanical, biological significance for the city. And then they're also going to be looking at the tree canopy and for projects where they can invest perhaps in the future for planting trees. The Economic Development Commission had two things. One, they did a great job of that pass-through money from the federal government for helping businesses. And it was a joint county-city effort. And hats, kudos to the staff here at the city, because they delegated that, or not delegated that, I'm not sure what the right word is, but to an organization out in the Illinois Valley, which the pass-through money ended up where it was supposed to here in Grants Pass. They did a great job with very little administrative costs. So everybody recognized that, and I think a lot of businesses appreciated that pass-through money to hopefully stay in business till we get an economy that's going to go again. And last of all, the historical, I even have to look at the name, I apologize because I'm new to it. Historical Buildings and Site Commission. They had two motions. They added three places to the landmark list, and then they had two text amendments, mainly dealing with color in the historic district. And I look forward to working with those good people.
DJ.
Sure, Housing Advisory met on the 21st. Thank you, Rick and Vanessa, for joining that. That is awesome to see your willingness to come to those meetings. Please continue to do so. Housing has been on the front line of the discussion for many years, and I just have a really good feeling about this year. So I mentioned to them that there's going to be an appreciable number of items that are coming from council to them for their housing action plan. They plan on putting them in there and reprioritizing, so you guys can expect a list from them here very soon, whether it's 5 or 6 or 7 or 12, to say, here you go, these are our top priorities, please start working on them. The discussion on minimum density continued. However, it became more complex because the further you dive into a minimum density issue like that, you realize that there's so many different things that you need to consider in regards to minimum density. So I expect that to be at least another few meetings talking and fleshing that out. Let's see. So that, they made a motion for the appointment. Sorry, guys. Board of Commissioners met on the 26th. They had discussed, first a little caveat. I intend to involve Board of Commissioner meetings with these council liaison reports because something that was identified in that meeting was we need to have better communication with the BOC. We need to understand their policy better. They can understand our policy better. It's my intent to kind of drive that partnership because it really hasn't been that over the past couple years. So any input to bring to their table, please bring it up, and so we can help kind of facilitate that communication. They talked about the DMO starter board and their desire to be on that starter board. Of course, we had mentioned that it was council's desire to see some concrete financial input to be on that board. They had mentioned that it was their intention to utilize some of the tourism lodging tax dollars that they were proposing to blanket in the city limits to help support that DMO. However, that was the first time that I heard that. I think that their TLT intentions were fairgrounds and airport heretofore, but that's not saying that it's untrue what they told us. However, they said given that we might be foregoing their opportunity for a blanket TLT in Grants Pass, that might stifle their efforts for financial contributions to the DMO. Wanted to bring that up to council because I understood before this council said you have to put money if you want to be a part of the board. They came back and said they'd want to be a part of the board otherwise, so that's something that we're going to kind of need to talk about, but I think we're going to be talking about that here really soon on the 8th or 16th. So just to be aware that that's going to come out of that conversation. Let's see. Ooh, something that's really exciting. US 199 Expressway upgrade. Phase 1's complete, Phase 2 is complete, Phase 3 is still kind of, ooh, what are we going to do? That whole interchange between Redwood Avenue getting onto Redwood Highway, if you're not aware of that project, please educate it on yourself, because the current plan is very messy as far as cul-de-sacs and loading onto that intersection. Commissioner DeYoung actually has a really good idea to at least start talking about different ways that we can make that intersection a lot better. I know that they had a meeting with transit, so we can bring that to the table. I'm not sure about timelines or otherwise, but I'm really happy to know that other ideas are being proposed rather than that really messy intersection proposition before anything's done. So that was nice to hear. We talked about the airport briefly because council expressed interest in, hey, why are they asking for $250,000 from the city? Does it have to come from the city, etc.? This is kind of a rolling conversation that I guess is appropriate. I told them basically, given that it is an enterprise fund, we would like to understand what kind of funding mechanisms have been entertained. Why is it basically stated that the $50,000 per year for 5 years needs to come from the city? Otherwise, this project wouldn't move forward. They recommended that we get Graves here, the manager of the airport, to discuss all of those things. So I'd like to get that onto the workshop agenda here, March, April, so we can talk about that and understand it better, because I think that that's a really good thing for the community, but city involvement otherwise, we're far from that. We talked a little bit about their fire district and stuff, but the meeting concluded because they are very much so, we have 1 hour and that's all you get. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Valerie? Yes, that was actually part of what I was going to discuss also, because I'm a big part of the MRMPO, which does not meet until we didn't have a meeting. Well, we did kind of have a meeting, but anyway, we had a brief meeting to just talk about the bus hub a little bit. They're gathering and putting together a presentation that they're going to give to the council. So we had a meeting on that, and the MR, which is Middle Rogue Metropolitan Planning Organization, and we're also a part of OMPOC, which is the Oregon Metropolitan Planning Consortium. So that meeting was on Friday, and believe it or not, they're talking about the 2024 through 2027 STIP, which is the State Transportation Improvement Plan, and it is a little different than the plans they've had in the past. And so RVAC, which is the Rogue Valley Active Transportation Group, has had less influence, and the Middle Rogue or the Metropolitan Planning Organizations have it's all kind of trying to gel together in terms of what's going on in the state. But there's a lot going on throughout the state, and I will say that what's kind of come from it is that there's more money being put in for non-highway, which is bicycle, pedestrian, there's kind of been this shift that's happened up north. And so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out going forward in the next few years, and less on enhancement programs, because I used to be building like big roads, like the big thing over in Medford, the roundabout and the bypass, and there's less money going to those big projects, and so because they have less money. The revenue is only 2%, going up 2%, and the costs are going up 6%, and that's a lot of money in transportation. So they're really having to learn how to come back, and a lot of gas tax money is also, we're getting a lot less, and we're getting more fuel-efficient cars, and so somehow we need to keep our transportation pavement going and building going and all the things people want. So they're going through a lot of changes up there at ODOT, trying to make that happen. And at the same time, we're hearing more and more, as we know, about the carbon tax and how we need to, lessen the impact on the environment. So there's a lot of changes going on up there. I will just say the three things that we kind of shared down here in our area is the fact that we did indeed receive a planning assistance grant from Alta Planning to put together our Safe Routes to School action plan. So the state is going to help us with that, and we did get the $1.3 million grant for Lincoln Elementary School, or $1.7 million, excuse me, for infrastructure, sidewalks around the northeast area. And then the MRMPO also funded a study to identify alternatives for the connection of the Rogue River Greenway between the city of Rogue River and Grants Pass, which is the last leg of that particular greenway. So those are things that have happened, you know, within the last year. So that's transportation. I also just wanted to add, and this kind of goes back to the CEDC, the grants that came down to the city and the county. Well, SOREADY, which is the economic development, got an admin fee of 20% for the SoCare grant, the federal grant money that came back. And so they decided to take that 20% admin fee and give it back to the local community. So in Jackson County, they gave it to fire relief. And in Josephine County, they're actually taking the $12,000 and donating it back to Foundry Village. So that's kind of exciting that they're giving some extra funding towards Foundry Village. So they will do that presentation tomorrow at our Rotary Club.
Thank you, Brian, and then Rick.
I'll just keep it brief. I attended the Rogue Valley Council of Governments meeting last Wednesday, and the highlight to share with council is that they're going to be doing a newly elected officials orientation meeting at the end of March. And basically, it's just an opportunity to meet individuals that represent state agencies and, you know, just to kind of familiarize newly elected officials with those entities. So I'll send an email out to everybody, just sending that information out in case anyone wants to attend. Thanks.
Thank you, Rick.
I'd like to also congratulate Valerie on being appointed the president of MPOC, which says the Metropolitan Planning Organization statewide. So Grants Pass now has statewide presence.
Thank you. All right, we have mayor and council comments. Does anybody have something? Rob and then Vanessa?
So I think maybe this is a question for Mark or Aaron, but we've had, as a council, I think there's 4 or 5 different points that we have discussed and voted to include in our new or updated council rules. And I'm just wondering what it takes to codify those changes and where can we see those as being essentially the new rules of the road.
Well, I think we need to put that on the agenda. We can either do it as just a business meeting and have those all there, but it would need to be a resolution that you would approve that just itemizes those changes.
So maybe you would send that out, obviously in an email or memo, so we can all double check the accuracy, and then we can probably hopefully just, it should be really quick because we've already discussed it and voted on it.
Yeah, I think you're right, Councilor Pell. I don't think it would require a workshop unless their comfort level's not there, but as long as we were clear with the information we gave you, I could just do a quick memo and say, these are the changes to be made, and if there's no objections, we'll schedule it for a future business meeting.
Vanessa?
I wanted to bring to the attention that the City of Grants Pass has a middle housing code survey open right now for the community to get involved in. It does have an expiration date. It will close on February 12th. The purpose of this survey is to get the input from members of the community around middle housing and just generally being rent burdened. And it's a result from the meeting that we had last week, the Housing Needs Analysis Buildable Lands Inventory meeting. So that can be found on the city's website. Also, if you Google Grants Pass Middle Housing Code Survey, it's the first link that comes up. And I also want to remind the community that there is an opening on the council for a Ward 3 representation. And this also, the application deadline for that is February 16th. That application can be found online as well.
Thank you. DJ?
Just briefly wanted to bring up the parking lot at a strategic planning. We talked about updating a parks master plan. It's not on the agenda or in the hopper or otherwise. I wanted to bring it up in the audience to see if that's something that council wanted to at least put into the hopper that we talk about sometime this year.
Brian?
I'm interested in that. I would be interested in hearing what Parks Committee has to say. So maybe we can solicit that input from them.
Yeah, that'd be great. You know, right now we're a little inundated with, you know, other stuff for the agenda wise. I think that's a fantastic idea to field that to Parks Advisory Committee to see if they'd like to update Parks Master Plan. That way we're working on it in the meantime.
All right, I had one thing regarding our discussion next Monday about the transient lodging tax. We had discussed on Monday having the opportunity for the Board of Commissioners as well as the Tourism Committee to have a presence and speak at that, but I got a call from somebody who's just a member of the tourism industry, wondering if they should email or whether we would have that discussion opportunity for public comment during the workshop on that topic. So wanted to see if you guys were open to public comment during the workshop on Monday.
Well, I know, did we also talk about having the DMO be available for input? I haven't really spoken to them other than I know that several of them are on the Tourism Advisory Committee, so I have a feeling they got what they want.
Kind of a strong crossover there, but yeah, just.
Yes, crossover, because but I know we were having a meeting on Friday morning, so I didn't know whether there would be more input or whether they wanted to give more input then. So I don't know. I'm open to getting input from various members myself, various constituents.
I mean, this person was willing to send an email, just wanted to, know if they were going to be able to speak or if they should send an email. So if you all are okay with public comment during the workshop on the transient lodging tax? Okay.
So I want to make it clear, you're just opening it up to anyone who wants to talk public comment on this topic and during the workshop.
I don't know, I'm not going to make them submit a resume personally, so I don't know how to make a distinction unless we're just inviting particular people. But leave it up to you guys to make a decision if you have thoughts on that. Rick?
Can we specify honored guest or invited guest to speak rather than just public, or how does that work?
Well, the only concern that I've had, which I've witnessed with the councils before in the past, is that we've had supposed experts in the field discuss things with you, and it's been information that has not been truly founded in fact, or it is one-sided to some degree. And so making sure that you have, the best unbiased information to make an informed decision is important for workshops. It's up to you to determine who currently right now is the professional in the field, and we've been inviting them to the workshops if it's above and beyond staff or a chair or something along those lines. So moving it to being totally open to the public in a workshop is definitely a departure from any past practice that we had, and I just wanted to make sure we clarify so we can make sure we inform the public on how you want to have that workshop on Monday.
Brian?
It doesn't seem like there's a middle road, like we either allow whoever wants to speak, or we have, I guess, presenters or very invested stakeholders like the BOC who have a vested interest. So the middle path does not sound like it would work.
DJ?
I'm not interested in allowing public comment. We already have Board of Commissioners and the Chair of Tourism Advisory with staff speaking on that issue, and meetings are long, and they can email us, they can call us, they can do all that. There's more than one, there's multiple mechanisms to get a hold of council, and I don't want to inundate the workshop with public comment.
Valerie?
I think I'll just add to that. I mean, I do think, as he said, we do know that we'll have the tourism there. I'm assuming probably Doug or whoever is the chair will be there for the tourism. I mean, Brad Neva is basically that.
He is not on the tourism committee.
He's not, but he is on the DMO, so I don't know whether, if there's anything there. But anyway, and I will talk to them, maybe, he was here the other day as well. So I guess maybe we'll just have Doug Bradley, who is the chair of the DMO. I mean, he could, I guess, speak for both of those. And then just have an email.
Real quick, can we have a motion to extend the meeting past 9 o'clock?
So moved.
Vanessa, thank you. Rick with the second, thank you. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Not hearing any, okay. So I think what,
Comment?
yeah, hang on just a sec. I think what we agreed to was the tourism committee and the county commissioners. I don't think we actually agreed to the DMO.
Fine with, because actually Doug Bradley is also the chair of the DMO, so.
Yes, okay, Rob?
So I would suggest that it not just be an invitation to Doug Bradley, it would be Doug Bradley or someone that he designates, because there's aspects of that that he actually does delegate, completely. So whoever he thinks is the best representative for what we're talking about, and it's probably Terry or, with regards to the tax, but someone he designates rather than him, yeah.
Okay. The irony of this conversation is that it is Terry Hopkins who asked me, but I'm not 100% sure that he was asking on behalf of himself. So, what? About whether he would be able to speak. So, yeah, I don't know if he was asking, just exclusively about himself, but he is a member of the tourism committee. He's the vice chair. But okay, so at this time, we'll just leave it to invited guests, and anybody else from the tourism industry who wants to comment can send us an email. All right? All right, any other items from mayor and council? Staff. And actually, Mark has something that he wants to bring up regarding a decision we made earlier with regard to the adult business use ordinance.
Yeah, so I neglected to realize at the time when we were talking about the adult use that there are various restrictions on marijuana type businesses that are embedded within the adult use section. So I'm going to summarize them. There are 3 of them. One is you cannot be within, a marijuana dispensary cannot be within 1,000 feet of a daycare. Another is that dispensaries cannot be within 1,000 feet of other dispensaries. And then another one is that producers and processors, which are different than dispensaries, cannot be within 500 feet of a school in an industrial zone. And I think and I recall standing at the lectern and with a past council a number of years ago and hashing that one out, and I think the reasoning behind that is producers and processors, I believe, have to be in an industrial zone, but I'm not 100% correct on that. In any event, it seems to me the focus of the discussion was eliminating the adult use classification in general, but I didn't want to be presumptuous and present an ordinance that just wipes out all the marijuana stuff or that retains the marijuana restrictions. So I need some additional direction. Sorry to bring you back to this. My proposal, if you want to keep the marijuana aspects of this intact, which really are, I believe, a whole different notion than what you were discussing, then we can repeal the adult use provisions, and then I can restate the marijuana related provisions. Just because if you repealed if you just say we're repealing 14.600, 14.610, and then you leave some out, the code would look really weird. It'd be like playing Jenga with it and pulling out little things. So I can package it up so it makes sense and everything is in a concise spot like it should be. But I need council direction on that.
Rick?
I would be in favor of maintaining the marijuana distancing And I believe you had one of the marijuana people here saying today they were in favor, they indicated indirectly they're in favor of maintaining that distance.
Brian?
Yeah, I agree. The marijuana portion was not the intent of our conversation, and I think that, in the conversation, we kind of tried to make sure that was clear, and it wasn't at the time. So I would be in favor of kind of parsing that out.
So what if Mark were to bring us some language that focuses on repealing the ordinance, but then a separate ordinance that includes those marijuana items? Is that what you're suggesting, Mark?
Well, so we want to get the ball rolling with the DLCD notice. So what I would do is I would come up with language that repeals all the adult use stuff consistent with your direction, and then I would kind of restate or sort of relocate within chapter 1400 the marijuana provisions, because if you were to look right now, they're kind of interspersed. It's not like,
Right, so then we end up with items C, F, and J.
yeah,
or
exactly. That's exactly what I'm getting at. And so it's very easy for me to do this, and that way we can submit it to DLCD, and then when it comes back to council for a hearing after DLCD notice, then ultimately council can make the final
And
decision
then we
at
could
that
have
point.
the
But
discussion about whether or not to keep or also repeal the marijuana portions on that day instead of kind of right at this moment, right?
that would be all under consideration.
DJ?
Yeah, I don't think we were intending to talk about cannabis industry, and I think what Mark's proposing is absolutely fair. Strike the whole thing, make sure that the word and intent is the same, put it in a nice, neater category, and rock and roll.
All right, why don't you, Valerie?
I would agree with that, because I think that's too much to unwrap otherwise. So I think just give you the direction that you just stated, just reinstate that in a different place.
All right, do you need us to vote on that? I mean, it's something that's going
Well,
to be
we took a
decided at a
motion
future
earlier,
date.
so to be consistent with that, I would ask that you ask your fellow councilors for a motion.
Okay. Motion, DJ?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to amend the ordinance as stated by Mark.
Brian with the second. Discussion? All right, we'll vote. Brian?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Rob? All right, staff, do you have
Yeah,
anything
I just
further?
have one item. I believe this morning we sent out to you the latest of the spreadsheet for public safety with the funding gap. And if you could take a look at that, that'd be great. As I was talking about Adam and scheduling and budget, getting ready for the budget committee presentation, I started to see naturally some gray hairs popping out in his head when he realized we are out of time. And I don't want to put undue pressure on council, but after Monday's our last day that we can really hold off actually inputting numbers if we're going to meet our budget calendar. We have to start now. So I hope that I know it's a difficult situation and difficult decisions, but we really need to run with whatever you have from a standpoint of come Monday after the discussion to start inputting things. And maybe we're not at the 2 million, maybe we're only at the 1.75, but we need to start inputting some things. One little change here affects everything, and so we need to try to get going on getting the budget. And so hoping for a productive discussion Monday and some additional direction from council on funding the gap.
All right, thank you. Other items from staff?
Just one brief item. I wanted to remind everybody we have a Bridge Street will be closed tomorrow for a half day. We did report that to be a full day. There are detours and flaggers in place to get you around the area, but as the Western Sewer Line project continues, they have to close it to install a new sewer manhole. So just be aware of that. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, should we have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second, Valerie, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, we are adjourned, 9:12. Thank you.
Oh, 9:12, not bad.
I gotta get going.